abaseke. Greetings and welcome to GatherVerse Tech for Humanity Summit, Africa 2025. We certainly hope that you've been keeping well since our last GatherVerse Summit that we had. This is our 33rd Global GatherVerse event, and we're so happy to be able to join with you all over the world, quite literally. We're broadcasting and restreaming in various social media locations and destinations, but primarily at GatherVerse.live. We have a tremendous amount of expressions to chop wood on. There's so much to cover. I had a curiosity about Africa, about Asia, North America, Oceania, the Middle East, Europe. I wanted to know what was being innovated, transmetropolitan, transcontinental around the world. Who was building what, with whom, and with what? We are in an unprecedented time of technical innovation unlike any of us have ever seen contemporary to our time. GatherVerse meets at this intersection of humanity and emerging technologies, not just artificial intelligence or the metaverse, if you will, but all the technologies that abide within the greater ecohabitat. When I think about technology, I think about ecosystems, I think about people, I think about mono and polycultural development. I think about so many people that I've heard over time saying that we'll be the next Silicon Valley, where I presently reside. But I've always expressed, why be the next Silicon Valley when you can be your own technical destination? Every single technology theater and every single ounce and square of real estate, of land, of culture brings its own individual use case of technological innovation of scale of progression. Meaning that when we take ecoculture, these human characteristics that are permeated in and throughout technological ecosystems themselves, in and of itself, whether it be a continent, a state, a town, a country, or a heartbeat, you have something to contribute that no one else could ever contribute. Geocentrically, we're focused on the corpus of culture, cumulatively speaking, together, where we're bringing different hearts and different people from around the world to be able to express what it is that they come to know and understand when it comes to innovative, technical exploration, in particular in the AI frontier. We meet at this intersection of humanity first standards of education and community development and safety and privacy and wellness and ethics and trust, care and compassion and more. What we think we understand about technology is infinitesimal compared to that which is to come. We're very much on a rudimentary scale. I know it seems like we're so advanced. And yes, compared to what we've seen, if you will, through the ages and dispensations itself, we are advanced. We have come quite a ways. But my friends, we have so much more to go. There is so little that we do know, and so much more there is to know. And I believe for technology to be as best as it can be, that everyone around the world must have the opportunity to be able to innovate. No matter the color, no matter the gender, no matter the location. And so this week, we kick off a series of events and expressions when it comes to this present state of technical innovation and scale, and the hyperscale of the frontier of what we come to know as AI, and so much more. And I am not alone. We have an incredible roundtable discussion speaking to the prosperity and the prosperous opportunities of the continent. I'm ready to be a student once again. And I'm happy and thankful for the opportunity to be able to sojourn with this roundtable as we continue and as we go forward, as quick as it will come, as quick as it will go, this Day 1 GatherVerse Africa Tech for Humanity Summit 2025. Tell a neighbor, tell a friend. There are many of you watching. We're so happy to have you at GatherVerse.live. Once again, may our gather be well. And greetings, everyone. We're so happy to have each of you with us. And let us all mute our mics as we continue to move forward with this roundtable discussion. I see each of you have come to arrive, and we're very happy to see all of you. Let's mute the mic for Chantel as well. Great. Okay, we've made it. So it's been a long time coming, and we certainly hope that all of you are keeping well. And as we move forward on this roundtable discussion, audience, we'll be going through a series of different questions and expressions, and we want all of you to be able to have an open sense of understanding that with GatherVerse, we're not just geared and aimed for products, but we're also geared to understand how these products and how these modern innovations may impact humanity, and as it's been expressed already in the opening, that which is to come. Panelists, we have a number of different questions to go over. There will be things on topic and off topic, if you will. But for now, I'd like for you to be able to express who you are, what you do, and what inspired you to be with us today. We'll begin with the one that's next to me, Chantel. Welcome.
Thank you, Christopher. Good to be here. My name is Chantel. I run a business called Phoenix. So best you know, I'm going to put you through the fire. Effectively, what I do is I facilitate transformation by building integrity from the inside out. And I do this through 3 keys: curiosity, to know what the things that are holding you back, that are inside you, your belief systems; courage, to step into the new version of yourself; and confidence, to live as a whole person with integrity. Now, I don't come from a tech background, but I love being part of these things, because if we're whole people, we can show up as our fullest version of ourselves. And when that happens, we can harness the tech and the opportunities that are there for us. So excited to be here. Thank you, Christopher.
Chantel, we greet you once again. We're very excited to have you here. Thank you. Grant, please.
Thank you. I am Grant McGaw, CEO of 5-Star BDM. That's for Business Development Marketing, or Brand Development Master, depending on what side of the ball you might be on as we engage. I'm also the host of the Follow Brand podcast, that is a worldwide show that showcases personal branding and business development throughout the world. I am here to showcase the African continent and what it is doing at an unprecedented level, and to change the narrative in the Western culture about the African world and what it brings to the table for present modern mankind.
Thank you so much, Grant. We're very happy to have you once again, sir. Allison, please.
Thank you so much for having me. So I'm Allison. I'm a founder and GP of Emerging VC EcoScore. And why I'm here is because I am such an ally of the continent of Africa, having worked there for over 7 years in West and East Africa. I really understand the challenges and the opportunity that exists in the region. Our thesis at EcoScore is to support the new global, they're not new, but newly identified global majority, which is underrepresented founders. And we are here to demonstrate that underrepresented founders have a place within the VC system, and they have a place in the startup ecosystem, and they deserve the funding that is there for them to take. So thank you so much for the invite to be on here, and really looking forward to the discussion.
I suspect there's a lot that we'll be able to cover, Allison, and especially based on what you just said when it comes to funding in particular and the narrative of prosperous Africa. We greet you. Thank you, Allison. Salvation, please.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you all. I'm happy to be here. My name is Salvation Chigaraka, and I'm an operations and product manager at each blog. What I do is basically helping founders in Africa to launch their MVPs in market. And I've been doing that for a couple of years now, helping founders who have great ideas, innovative ideas, launch their markets, their products to market. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much, Christopher.
Salvation, we're so happy to have you here for the first time. And Effie, your mic, please.
Hi, Christopher. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Efionan. I'm a Google Women Tech Makers ambassador, and I'm also an innovator. My role in my role as a product designer, I have had experience. I have had experience in working on a lot of African problems, and through my lived experience, I believe that I'll be able to add to this conversation. I look forward to being a part of this and hearing what everyone else has. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Effie. We're very happy to have you with us once again. Panel, shall we begin? So, I sit here and ask myself, the narrative of prosperity, what might that look like? Where might that come from when we start thinking about the scale of operation? Around the world, we're seeing a tremendous amount of capital and resources being applied to this great juggernaut of artificial intelligence. And we know that at some point, the workforce will be tremendously and rather incredibly disrupted, as we're already to see glimmers of this happening now, where humanity in a lot of ways is not only contending with one another naturally and competing when it comes to technical disruption, but we're also seeing it when it comes to now the competition when it comes to artificial intelligence. And what I mean by that is that this machine species, or the way that humans use these models, are in such a way fashioned when it comes to business and enterprise and startup culture that we're able to see startups amass wealth overnight. In fact, and what we're seeing in particular here in Silicon Valley and echoed throughout the world, we'll be seeing more millionaires formed than we've ever seen in our lifetime and may ever see again. I think about this, and I think about what will happen when it comes to the great development of scale of wealth and what is being sacrificed for such. Salvation, I'm coming to you first when it comes to this question. When it comes to technical understanding and when it comes to artificial intelligence, and you're seeing this in the great country of Nigeria, what are you seeing as a whole? Your mic, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chris. So far, looking at how Africa has been going, it's good to see that we have been embracing the digital economy and leveraging on technology. But then there are also things that Africans need to focus on, which is, from my perspective, working with founders and then coming to the builder ecosystem and then the market. Africa is actually pushing for the global stage, and that global stage will need support, which is where Africans will need to bring in their focus on in helping to build the African culture of growth in terms of innovation. And then, speaking of a prosperous Africa beyond economic growth, I also believe that beyond the resources we believe leveraging on in Africa, we can also focus our attention to the healthcare system where we've been lacking. We also focus in good education, quality education, where we also should be seeing progress and prosperity in Africa as well.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Salvation. I sit here and think and ask myself, Allison, when we talk about these things of innovation, in order for a technology ecosystem to be able to start, it needs fuel of two things. It certainly needs education, but it also needs capital. And this is something that we know that many places around the world, and that including the continent of Africa, severely lacks when it comes to other different technological ecosystems around the world that have found themselves with the immensity of the type of wealth and resource and access. How do we bridge these gaps, Allison?
That's a $1 million question just in itself, and not one that's easy to answer. But I think that, you know, historically, if you look at how venture capital works and historically how funds have been transferred, you know, it's 98% of all historic VC funding or LP funding into VCs has gone to the same traditional VC models. So all the big names. And what does that tell me as an emerging VC? It tells me that those large VCs that are the Sequoias, the Y Combinators, the Andersons, they invest in people that are like them. They have a thesis and they just stick to that thesis. And what does that mean? That means that everyone else only has 2% of that money to go all around the globe, to go to Asia, to go to Africa, to go to Australasia, to go to Europe. And so that is absolutely bonkers. So I think that, first of all, when you're looking at it on a global stage, you really need the investors, and the way that funding works really needs to change. We need to be looking at a new way of funding, and for philanthropy to play a bigger role, and for there to be a level of understanding of what these regions are. You know, if you look at the population of Nigeria, for example, just because you mentioned it earlier, that's, you know, over nearly 250 million people. If you look at the US, it's almost 350 million people. So Nigeria is in itself a massive market. And to be successful and to be a unicorn, you don't necessarily need to go out of Nigeria. And that's where the complexity comes from. It's a PR and marketing. It comes down to that. And
Sure.
When these companies that are to grow and to be incredibly successful don't need to necessarily leave their borders. And now Nigeria is a unique example. But there are levels of complexity in Africa as well. But when you don't necessarily need to leave the continent, it's very hard to attract those large US investors. And it is about self-promotion. It is about marketing and the exposure that they need to get. And that is one of the biggest challenges. Now, having said that, how do you get the money in? And I think there is a shift, certainly within the UK and the London markets, and within Europe. There's a lot more discussion around underrepresented founders, a lot more discussion about showcasing specific African-focused events, showcasing Europe as a place where African companies can make the move into Europe as part of their expansion plan. And it's in doing it in this way, and vice versa, for European and UK companies to move into Africa as part of their expansion plan, that raises the bar. It raises that and it opens that door. It opens the door to all the funding that is there, both from a government perspective, from a private perspective, and from the VC perspective. So I think that the tides are changing. There's a lot more awareness and there's a lot more openness, but I think that it really comes down to promotion, trust, and marketing of yourself as founder and of your business.
You know, that's a perfect segue. And thank you for sharing that, Allison. Grant, I'm coming to you now. Chantel, we're coming to you right around the corner. Effie, you're after. When I think about this, the opportunity that Africa has, and I see what's happening with those that are able to vibe code, meaning audience, to be able to expressly build your own platforms in a very accelerated way using these agentic systems of AI, these non-deterministic systems, to be able to build platforms and of such a lightning and rapid succession, unlike anything we've ever seen before when it comes to acceleration. We have never moved this fast before here in Silicon Valley. And my point in saying this and going back to what you're expressing, Allison, there's a few school of thoughts that I have. One, I would like for Africa to one day be in a position which I think is grounded in reality to where it can start funding Silicon Valley. Hear me out. There's all these different people in Nigeria alone, from Kenya to Senegal, all the way from South Africa to Cape and to Joburg and all these other places of Rwanda and Uganda and all these other locations, Zimbabwe and Lesotho. I believe that Africa has so many people, so many resources that are being pillaged by other different continents, but that's a whole different narrative and a whole different summit. But I believe that Africa has so much to contribute with so many humans and hearts that it can one day find itself in such a prosperous situation in and of itself, with the global ecosystem to be able to deal and to be able to have buy, sell, and trade ecosystems right within its continent, that it can amass so much wealth, not just with already the wealth that it has with copper and platinum and palladium and gold and tin, but it can be able to create such a great, incredible atmosphere of technical skill, unlike anything the world has ever seen. It doesn't have to live in fictional stories of Marvel comics to be able to have something that can be actual and true. And so that brings me over to Grant and Allison. You were spot on. Bringing in those that are innovating to show the way to those in the continent on what's present day state of the art, I think is brilliant. But to give them a baton. But Grant, fundamentally, they have to understand brand. They have to understand startup development. They have to understand market, as Allison said. You need to teach and educate those who have the desire to innovate to be able to take it to the next level of step of scale. And I know you know a little something about that.
Absolutely. And everything that we've spoken about today, we're talking about the narrative. What is the current day narrative when people think perception wise of the African continent? We're talking about a very large place in the world. And that perception is normally, or just take a look at yourself, isn't in a dark, skewed way. You're not seeing reality. You're operating out of a perception that is an outcropping of colonialism over the last, let's just say, 500 years. That narrative still rules today. What Allison just stated, if you're only getting 2% of VC money that's floating in world capital, that's ridiculous. So that tells you that narrative and that block is still present and operating in the financial sense, which is the lifeblood of the world economy. So you're constricting it. And so when you look at Africa, you look at it almost from that lens as a supplier and not a producer, not as a creator. However, it is leading the reality of that brand, as you just talked about, is that Africa right now is not waiting for permission to innovate. They've already proven major models in mobile money. Think about that. They are the leaders in cryptocurrencies from a government perspective to a consumer perspective in the world. In the world, they are leading in the world of clean energy adoption. They are leading in the world of telehealth. I was at a HIMSS conference. If you're not familiar with HIMSS, that's the Health Informatics System Society, 100,000 members worldwide. One of the showcase innovations that they had was on drone technology, where they're actually utilizing drones to get medication out to these remote areas. They've been doing this for a number of years. They were the first to use mobile technology for cryptocurrency at scale than anyone else in the world because of what they have in place today. They are not behind. They are ahead in many, many different ways. Now, as the landscape not only shifts, to your point, Christopher, technologically, but it is shifting financially. The rapid change from traditional banking systems to cryptocurrencies is huge. This is an open window for a change in narrative and a change of perspective, because money is a representation of value. Where is that value? I look and point even in South America, where you have a small company called, or country called Guyana. That's Guyana. The discovery of oil, the discovery of gold there is a game changer for the Caribbean market. This is happening not only there, but also in the African world. So now, instead of operating on legacy systems that have been in place for a number of years, you operate on new systems. You don't have to go back and operate on older archaic systems. You can get to the newness now. Africa is on this cusp, but the narrative in the mind of the people of the world has to change. They need to see Africa for what it is today, present time. I operate out of what I call the BRAVE framework, because you have to be brave in order to get your message told. You've got to be bold, you've got to be resilient, you've got to be authentic, you've got to have a vision, and you have to execute every day, because the powers that be are very serious about holding on to power. But if you have as they say, he who has the gold makes the rules. There is plenty of gold in Africa, and I will leave it right there.
Thank you, Grant, for expressing that. Chantel, let's remove for a moment, and I agree, there's plenty of gold. Let's remove the gold. Let's remove the tech. Let's get to the human essence of this. Let's talk about the psychology needed, because without this, without having the desire, without having a sense of unity and community with something that you're innovating for, who you innovate for, what you innovate for, beyond money, beyond material. Sure, these things are needed in many ways to sustain, right? But to sustain what and for whom? We start talking about this deep narrative of when it comes inside. My question to you is, what does this mean, Chantel? What does the mind think that we must enter into going into these technological prosperative ecosystems, so that we can not only sustain, but we can scale and survive, and not leave anyone behind?
Christopher, you know me well. You've steered the conversation in the direction of we are people first, and then we are our jobs. Identity, right? Now, I'm an African. I was born on the African continent. I've lived on the African continent for the last nearly 50 years. And I think there's a mindset in Africa, the mindset, or the prevailing mindset, has always been that we need a bailout, or we need help from the superpowers in the world. We need funding. We need the support. So what is this creating in Africa? This mindset, right? What we've got to do, we talk a lot about education, and we talk about capital, and we talk about skills development and all of these things. And there's nothing wrong with all of those things. But you can educate people to a point. You can throw money at people to a point. If the mindset doesn't shift, we are going to squander the resources that are given to us. We are going to squander the education that is given to us. We have to build our people up from a personal development perspective. We've got to start building whole people. And again, we come from a collective consciousness where Africa is the repressed, Africa is the war continent, Africa is slavery. This is the collective mindset that we've kind of carried with us. We've got to start changing that mindset. Grant spoke about the narrative. This is a story that we have told ourselves, and it is time to tell ourselves a story that we can fund Silicon Valley, but it starts with the individual. And one of my biggest bugbears in the work that I do is that it's really, really easy to secure funding for skills, for education, for capital, for investment. But the minute you put a funding proposal in for personal development, people go, yeah, personal development, But without investing in ourselves, how can those founders take things forward? And we have got amazing people in Africa, but we've got to shift the mindsets.
I agree wholeheartedly. I have had the pleasure of knowing so many people from the continent. I know, and when it comes to the ancestry of my nativity, it comes from that continent. But with all the people that I know and all the people that I met and all the business that I do on the continent and the people that I care for, I realize every day I know nothing about the continent because there's so many different diverse cultures that are there. There's so many different forms of representation, so many tribal considerations, so many advances in business. And make no mistake that Africa is the most advanced continent on the earth when it comes to fintech technologies. I think they have such an incredible cumulative wealth of information when it comes to financial distribution and deployment. But Effie, I want to hone in on Kenya. I want to look at that ecosystem, Effie, to help me understand what's the current state of prosperity when it comes to Kenya. I see such a despair with so many reports that I hear when it comes to the different people of this beautiful country, this land, and the opportunities that are lacking, but the opportunities that they seek and that they want, quite capable as well. What are you seeing there, Effie? Can you share that with us briefly, please?
So, thank you for the question. So, in my experience, I'd say as an innovator, I believe that innovators are the ones who are driving the country forward. We have a huge youth population, more than any other. For the first time in history, in Kenya, we've had a lot of youth. So this means that youth are the future of the country. And as such, youth are supposed to be helped to innovate and to succeed so that we can all progress as a country. What I'm seeing is trends where it's very hard for youth to get funding. It's very hard for you to get opportunities. And in Kenya, as well as other African countries, we have situations where people have learned to innovate because they didn't have any other choice. Take an example of M-Pesa. M-Pesa is the biggest fintech company in Africa. And M-Pesa started out through innovation because it started out through necessity because people didn't have a way to send money back home to their parents, people who live in urban areas. And just like that, the idea of M-Pesa came. So Kenya has the potential of um, of innovating and
And,
solving problems in
Effie,
such.
let me ask you the M-Pesa versus the shilling. Are you seeing more people use M-Pesa more than the shilling?
Yes, M-Pesa is currently expanding to other countries, and I believe that with time and with enough innovation, it will be able to expand to other places. So yes, I see more people using M-Pesa than the shilling. Yeah.
You know what's so impressive about this, Epi, and please, I want you to continue this. And audience, when you think about it, when we talk about the aspirations of fintech, many people have talked about being able to create different type of currencies that are moving away from fiat, if you will, and thinking about crypto assets and altcoins and meme coins, if you will. But what the continent has done quite successfully is that they're using currency in ways that we've never seen used before ecologically. Most places around the world cannot say that when it comes to the cumulative of society that uses this form of currency in exchange. What does this mean about what we think about dollars and cents? Please, Effie, continue talking about the things that are needed when it comes to technical scale and the opportunity that not only the continent needs, but the great country of Kenya as well. And Salvation, we're coming into you next.
Yeah. So my belief is that Kenya has the potential to innovate in really creative ways, and that the youth should be given these opportunities. So, as youth, it's very hard to get funding, it's very hard to get opportunities. And this has to change if we're ever going to have a prosperous Africa. To me, prosperity is it's not just the economy, it's having a place where everyone can live comfortably, everyone can get access to education, healthcare, and most of the other basic services. And for this to happen, we need to give the youth a chance to innovate. We need to give the youth a chance to experiment. So that's why it's really important for Kenya to focus on youth innovation. And we've seen youth innovate in different ways, even in the absence of funding, even in the absence of money. You see youth doing something very crazy with little to no funding, and it actually working in the continent. So it would make a lot of sense to prioritize youth innovation and to use models that are fit for Africa, because innovation in Africa is a different ball game. Something that happens, things that work elsewhere in the world due to the unique conditions of Africa and say, let's say Kenya, these things do not work in Kenya. So innovation is very different and it's very unique in this part of the world. So that's why we need to take this into account. Back to you, Christopher.
Thank you so much, Effie. I really appreciate that sentiment. I find it so powerful and so many things that even Chantel and everyone else has touched on as well. Salvation. I think about this here in Silicon Valley. Most people innovate for opportunity. But when you bring the narrative of innovating to survive, as if you have nothing else left, with your back against the wall, and you say, I have a little bit of broadband, I have a little bit of Wi-Fi, I have a little bit of code, and now I have this resource called artificial intelligence in my hand. I don't have to go buy it off the shelf. I don't have to wonder if it will be deployed and distributed like an XR headset. It's here, it's with me, and I can build. And so that's more than just a dollar and a dream. But to think that our young people, as Effie just expressed, that are the ones that can lead and are leading innovatively the opportunity to survive, just to survive, a roof over the head, food in the belly, nurturement, salvation. I think about the ubiquity and the abundance of all the minds in Nigeria, so many different people, so many different innovators. What is the barrier, the common barrier to entry that you see, Salvation? And what do you believe that can be done to be able to alleviate, mitigate the gap so that we can hyperscale forward collectively? And we can start to benefit and to be recipients of the incredible technological innovation that the continent, in particular Nigeria, has to offer. Okay, so we're happy to have her back. She probably clicked the wrong button. Allison, can you take that? Because what I want to do is I want to be able to round in further with this idea of being able to have mind exchange, of having a group of people to be able to come to one place. Maybe it's uncomfortable. Maybe it doesn't feel well. Maybe it doesn't seem like the best state for them to be in. But what it is and what it does do, it allows us to be able to lead towards what Effie just expressed when it came to education. But before that, we'll add Salvation back on the stage so that she can answer that. But we're going to hard in on that, Allison, and then we'll be with you in just a moment, Grant.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's a great thing that we've been talking about the innovative side of Africa, the Africa needing funding, and the narrative and all that. I will take a bit of what Chantel said about mindset, and then narrow down to it as a barrier to a prosperous Africa. So for me, it's we having the mindset that we are able and capable to be able to have the innovation, have the ability to create the innovation, have the ability to produce the innovation to build a prosperous Africa. So it starts with a mindset. It starts with coming down to the grassroots via the education system, via the health sector system, via the banking system. We're seeing lots of beautiful innovation, the young ones channeling all their abilities into creating innovation. It's beautiful. But then we need to have an individualistic mindset that in Africa, for we Africa to be able to project ourselves to the global perspective we want to aim for, we need to have the mindset to be able to, have break down the barriers. And now speaking of the barriers, we have the political barriers, we have the financial barriers, we have the health barriers, we have the low employment barriers, we have lots of barriers that we can start making a turnaround, channeling solutions to. But then how can we start? We can start by first changing our mindset. When our mindset becomes more individualistic, I have a responsibility to, in my own community, in my own society, be self-aware, be willing to give, be willing to receive. I'm creating a prosperous Africa. I'm creating a unified Africa. And currently here in Nigeria, we have a very high rise of startup founders and all that. It's good that we're channeling our energy to building tech companies like fintech companies and hectare companies. But if we start solving the basic problems, when we come down to the basic problems, bad roads, lack of electricity, lack of quality education, lack of skill acquisition. We have low manufacturing systems here in Nigeria. We need to, come down to the grassroots problem and start having solutions that actually solve those grassroots problems, because they are the most standard problems that make us survive on our day-to-day activities here in Lagos, Nigeria. Say, for example, we have a system where we have said, okay, in the next 5-10 years, we're going to build solutions that will be focused on helping all roads in Nigeria, all roads in Ghana, all roads in Kenya get fixed in the next 10 years. We will see the rise of logistics companies. Innovations in that area would, increase. So the barrier starts with our mindset. The barrier starts with, governance. The barrier starts with making the right policies that will help break down these barriers. So we need independent judicial system that encourage good systems that will help Africa break out of these barriers, that will encourage the innovative youths to be able to build financially and systematically to build these innovations at large. That's my take on that. Thank
I
you.
find that so fascinating. Thank you, Salvation. I've never heard anyone express in such fashion. We certainly doff our hat to what you just said. Don't only give me Wi-Fi, but give me a road to walk on. I find that just so interesting, because when I think about the fundamental foundation, what's needed, and what I've even seen, and what I've been a recipient of great, tremendous benefit here in Silicon Valley, that we've had not only roads to walk on, we've had great advancements in architectural structure, but I think about hacker spaces and maker spaces, the place to build, a place of common structure, a place to be able to hive mind and share and think and make and hack and code, and to be able to build. And if we don't have those essential things, I think about how can you even get started, even if you have the capital and the wealth to be able to do it. If I don't have a road to walk on, if I don't have a structured roof over my head consistently, how can I survive? With the essential things, we talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and more. Allison, how do we bridge these real deep gaps? What can global society, what can global contribution do? And what is the role and responsibility that the globe has to be able to scale and to be able to help towards the prosperity of others? I really think there's a deeper interlay of a conversation that's needed to be had here, and we're having it right here in GatherVerse. Please, Allison.
Yeah, so I feel like I'm getting all the tough questions.
Yes, you brought this upon yourself with your opening, but please.
No, I loved what Salvation was saying, and I think that it is absolutely spot on. I think, let's take a moment to just think about how amazing the continent of Africa is, right? And a real showcase of this is how they can leapfrog technologies. Look at the phone system, right? You're talking about, having a Starlink and wireless, satellite telecommunications. Africa essentially bypassed the oldie timies of connecting to a landline with your laptop and hearing the thing just so you could download some emails. If you're old, if you're too young, that was the pain that we went through. But Africa never went through that. They leapfrogged essentially landline technology, right? And I think that in itself is justice to how innovative thinking as a continent. And it is a really complex geopolitically,
That's right.
Location, everything. There's so many challenges there. Logistically, getting from one country to another, there aren't necessarily connecting flights. There's so many different currencies. but these challenges are become overcome. But I think that, when you look at what was achieved on the continent when it comes to telecommunications, that is a beacon of hope. And I think that when you look at it and they see globally what is going on and what is working in other countries, they don't need to necessarily iterate. Let the US, let Europe, let Asia iterate, and let Africa innovate and leapfrog onto that. Now, how is that going to happen? I don't believe that all the solutions are going to come from government, right? I think government are there for votes. They're there for a term, and they're there for, in a lot of cases, a popularity contest.
Sure.
Right. And sometimes they don't want to have those hard conversations. They don't want to have those difficult challenges and negotiations. And that's where private infrastructure needs to come in. Right. That's not selling out, but that's just the reality of what it is. And you see this as well in the US and in Europe and in Asia as well, when it comes to, SDGs and climate action. The governments are missing their targets. They're not going to be able to, to achieve what they promised in the Paris Agreement. It's all down to public and private firms to take on that burden. And I see Africa as a little bit the same. Yes, the governments are going to have to make those tough conversations. And I think that changes and demands from the younger populations, like in Kenya, you're starting to see they're demanding change. They're demanding that, the borders open, that there's easier transportation, that there's easier transfer of funds, of money between people. They're demanding solutions from the government, and that enables change. And so I think that, the people of Africa, which is a ridiculous thing to say in itself, because there is no person of Africa. There are so many amazing minds, but it's that collective. And I like to think of it as a collective. And that in itself is a mindset change, because historically it's been so tribal and it's been so cut off. But I think that the younger generation, the new people coming in, the Gen Zs, the alphas that have, maybe a smartphone in their pocket, that maybe see this opportunity, they're
Sure.
demanding change. They're
Sure.
demanding an open-mindedness, which is new and refreshing. And
Right.
I think that that's what we're going to see drive the change and be the enabler for the future, to make the governments make the accords for then business to come in and drive that change.
But to drive that change, to hand off the baton, Grant, let's really look at this in a very focused terrain for a second. Let's lean in together, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Where does that start? Where's the starting line? I mean, I hear what salvation is expressing. Really, what she's really talking about is the attribution of the fundamental construct of the smart city itself. As I sit here and listen, and I think about what Allison is expressing as well, and Chantel will be with you in just a moment, Effie as well. I think about this, and the youth have desire, but I often think about, especially our young people in this world, all they're looking for is a road. Which way do I go? Who will tell me? They cannot find that in the forest. The forest is a vast thing. It's very thick amongst the branches and the brambles, if you will. Where do I begin? And if there is no road, where do I begin to dig?
Mm-hmm. So fundamentally, what you're talking about, what I call, is the point of the spear. Where is it pointed? Meaning right now, fundamentally, there's a vacuum of leadership on the world stage, in a way that if the point of the spear right now is greed, it's fear, and it's scarcity. And this is what's pointed at the African continent, as well as most of the world, when you look at what does leadership look like. Because if leadership does not look like love, It does not look like creativity. It does not look like charity. Then the road is very dark and you become bogged down. You have to dig deep. And I go back to what I talked about earlier, to a framework. You've got to be brave. If you've got to make a decision as a people of what you want as an experience, not only for yourself, but for your current generation and your next generations. Africa is the youngest population on the planet, but it's also the most impressionable. And what are we giving as examples of leadership? And what does leadership truly look like? Because what are you leading to? I get on my soapbox with a lot of corporations around the world when all they do is report on their P&L and their profits. If that is your only goal, if that's all that you stand for, then that's all that you are. Meaning you have no intrinsic value. That's like having a full tank of gas in your car, but you have nowhere to go. You have to have a direction. What is your purpose? And if your purpose is to drive and build a greater economy, if your purpose is to drive and build a greater human experience on this planet, then you have to lead in that fashion. And you have to let go of the past in order to embrace a greater present and future. And this is a call to action for all of us, every single human being on this planet, because you have to look at what is leading your mindset today. What is top of mind for you? What is your purpose every day when you wake up? What are you trying to achieve? You have to look at the point of view, your point of your spear. What are you cutting through? Everyone has some kind of resistance that they're going to come across. You have detailed the resistance that's going across in the African world. It's looking to emerge, no doubt, and it will achieve its goal because it has to grow up and to become what it is meant to be. And I've seen a lot of great innovation that's coming out of and what I say, you're not exporting your oil or your cobalt. It's the talent that Africa has, and its developers, its scientists, its creatives, and it's redefining what global workforce truly looks like. And we've got to move past these survival stories and get into a strategy story that does not constrain innovation. And Africa, I believe, has this proof. I believe that the people on this panel have expressed that it's their culture is currency. Look at Afrobeats, look at Nollywood. These aren't just sideshows. They're leading indicators of Africa's influence on the global market.
Sure.
And this is how we continue to move forward. This is the point of our spirit.
Thank you, Grant. And with that said, Chantel, I want to end this with you. As I said, audience, as quick as it came, as quick as it goes, we have more onward to be able to go forward with these incredible expressions that have been given. Chantel, what is that value mindset that we must have as we move forward into this AI frontier that none of us have been to, none of us have gone, and none of us completely know where we're going at this innovative capacity? What must we carry with us into this forest?
Oh, Christopher, so much to choose from. But I think for me, what brings it all together is taking responsibility. As Africans, and I speak as an African first and foremost, we've got to learn to take responsibility. You know, you spoke when we started this panel about the workforce being disrupted and the rate of change, and we know this is going on, and the innovation. But what's happening on the African continent to a large degree is suddenly the world has opened up and everyone in Africa wants to go global. And as a professional speaker, I serve on the board of some speaking associations, and we're working with a lot of African speakers, and they all got stars in their eyes and they want to become global, right? And this applies to so many industries, but this is sort of my point of reference. It's just so indicative. But every single time we organize an event for them, then they moan about, oh, my internet is so bad, and oh, I live in a noisy area, and oh, I can't put my camera on. And you know what? Stop it. If you want to go global, you have to take responsibility and you have to up your game. And again, to reference Grant, What leadership are we looking at? We're looking at a legacy leadership who haven't taken responsibility, who have squandered wealth, resources, human capital. The change starts with us. We have to take responsibility in our own personal rights. And every single African, this is my call to my fellow brothers and sisters today to say, no one is coming to save you. You have to be the change that you want to see in the world. That's it. Okay, so I'll climb off that soapbox now.
That was a pretty tall soapbox, but we welcome it here at GatherVerse, just as we welcome each of you here today at this 2025 GatherVerse Tech for Humanity Summit, first roundtable that is now concluded. Audience, what have you taken with you? What will you do with that which was just said to you with this time that we never get back again? Panel, our Gather was well. And for next, we have Lynn and Alexander to talk about the opportunities and to continue forward with what Alice had expressed between Europe and Africa. May our Gather be well. Thank you.
Hello and greetings. Welcome to the first Fireside Chat, GatherVerse Africa Tech for Humanity Summit. Well, today I'm very, very excited because we have a diplomat today, and we're going to be talking about business outsourcing challenges, opportunities between Africa and Europe. My name is Lynn Gitao, communications for GatherVerse, and it's all my honor and my pleasure to welcome you, Sir Alexander. Please tell us who you are.
Yeah, good evening to all, to the audience in Africa. Good morning to the audience in the US. It's a great pleasure to be here today. My name is Alexander Vierlei. I'm currently the deputy head of the German embassy in Nairobi, Kenya. We are also in charge of Somalia from our embassy here and in charge of the Seychelles. I have also the responsibility of our economic department at the embassy, and this is where business process outsourcing is coming in.
Wow, we're very happy to have you here. Thank you for dedicating your precious time to be with us today. You know, I'm staring at my screen and I'm seeing some statistics here, and let me just highlight them. Africa by 2050 is said to be the largest workforce, making up to 25%. That is with 1 billion people. And I'm looking to the other side, I'm looking at EU Commission that estimates that EU will need an additional 1 million skilled workers in the next 5 years to sustain its economic growth. You have been in the lines of growing these ties between Africa and Europe. And for me, when I see these statistics, I think this is a perfect marriage. But it's easier said than done. So I just want to find out, in what ways is IT outsourcing influencing the economic ties between Africa and Europe? And I really want to boil down to the IT sector, but you can also zoom into other sectors. But for now, it's zooming into IT.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. We have in Germany an average age of our population of 44 years. In Nairobi, for instance, it's 19 years. So there you can see how different our societies are and what challenges comes with it. In Kenya, about 1 million young people enter the labor market every year. Out of those, 200,000 find a formal job and 800,000 end up in the informality. In Germany, we have a lack of skilled labor force that is increasing every year. So the German government has decided already a few years ago to lower the bars for foreigners to come to Germany and to work there. So this is one strategy. At the same time, we are looking, especially in the IT sector, how we can actually cooperate with countries that have the potential for business process outsourcing, for IT outsourcing, and other forms of digital services. I give you an example. German hospitals have an increasing problem of actually invoicing for their patients. So you need administrative staff, which is very expensive in Germany. It's difficult to find them. So why not looking for other countries where the invoicing can be done for German hospitals? And some businessmen have already found this opportunity and went to other countries to do that. Now, unfortunately, currently, other continents and other countries are in the main focus of German business, because they have maybe started earlier. They have set up a brand in business process outsourcing digital services. It's mainly India, but it's also Vietnam. It's the Philippines, and on the African continent, I think Morocco, and also Eastern Europe is still strong in that. So there's a lot to do for Africa to actually enter this market with power and brand itself as the more well, it's actually an IT hub that is closer to us, that has the same time zone, and that can actually perform at least on the same level than those countries I've just mentioned.
Yeah. And I'm just dragging a thread from one of the conversations from the roundtable we had previously. And, you've mentioned you're trying to capture the African market, or you're already doing that. But I'm just curious, what are the challenges, especially when it comes to bringing that bridge between Africa and Europe? And what are the opportunities as well?
First of all, if you have, if you're a European businessman and you are looking for business opportunities in Africa, you first go to your peer group, so other investors who are already in the country and who can tell you the true story of what will expect you and what are the challenges and what are the opportunities. So very important is that you treat the investors that you have in the country very well, because they will tell the story that is relevant for new investors. So what are the opportunities? I think the opportunities is I can speak more about Kenya than about Africa, but in Kenya we have a really well-educated young generation. The World Bank has rated Kenya as the country that has the best education for its people in Africa. Wow. Kenya, and I think also many other African countries, have very good English language skills. That is also an advantage if we look at Asia, where the language skills might not be as good as here in Africa. And when I talk to German businessmen, whether it's business outsourcing, whether it's the industrial sphere, they all say Kenyan workers and African workers in general are very loyal. They are very motivated because they see that there's a big chance in working for an international company and actually develop the own career. So I think as technical spoken, the human capital is the big asset of Africa. But then you have the general business conditions. Well, we diplomats usually tend to say good governance is a challenge, but you could also say corruption to be more frank. We have the problem that there is a lot of bureaucracy. In some countries, not so much in Kenya, but in other countries, I think it's a more of a problem. You need to have a robust internet connection or digital infrastructure. That's very important. It has to be easy to import all the equipment that you need. I've heard of some concerns in that regard, also of business people here in Kenya.
Yeah.
And I think Africa and the individual countries, they have to develop a brand. They have to go to Europe, to the US. They have to go to fairs and just promote the country as an outsourcing hub. Currently, if a German businessman thinks about outsourcing, he would first think about Asia, and you need to have someone who would actually direct you to Africa. If you don't have connections to Africa, then this would not be the first choice, because you would just not know of the opportunities that exist here.
Yes, I'm also curious to follow up on what you just said. You said on the issues of governance, corruption. This is something that has been raised, and it's open. Do you think the international world or the other parts of the world have a contribution? Can they influence this kind of governance? Is there a way that these two parts of the world can come together and say, your corruption is affecting our business, and for that sake, we need to do something on that? Can that happen? Is your role as a diplomat?
Yes, we do that. We talk a lot. We are in conversations as German embassy, German government, as EU, but also as the international community. But I think our contribution can only be a small one. Most of the, let's say, of the impulse has to come from the own society, from the own system. The only thing we can do is give advice, support in having the good legislation. That's what we do. Germany has a program on good governance with Kenya, so we support in that area. But at the end, it's all up to the decision of the leaders in the country, and improving the system from within. I think that's the main thing. We can support from outside, but we are not the driving force in that.
Yes, definitely. That is true. We are the driving force ourselves. I want to shift gears, and you mentioned strategies, and I want to go deeper into strategies. What strategies do you see are the most effective when it comes to aligning Africa tech skills and European IT outsourcing demands?
I think one important issue which I hear from German businesses is the transfer of data, and the question to which extent can I legally transfer data between Africa and Europe? And take the example of Kenya. Kenya has a very advanced data protection legislation that has actually led to a process that is now going on in the European Union. That will lead, hopefully, in the data protection adequacy decision. That means if everything goes well, German businesses will be able to transfer data from the European Union to Kenya the same way they transfer data from, let's say, Germany to Italy or Germany to France. So that would be a big asset, because Kenya would be the first country in Africa and one of the first in the world where this would be possible. And this is because the Kenyan government has worked very early on data protection issues, has aligned with Europe in that regard, and that will actually bring the country forward. I'm quite sure about that. Then, of course, as I said already, the branding of the country is very important. Bringing the message to the customers in Europe about the advantages of Kenya.
Yeah.
And then you have to find, and I think that is the most difficult thing. You have to, of course, at the end, the businesses will make a calculation. Will it cost me more or less investing in Kenya compared to, let's say, India or Bangladesh? So you have to be very cost effective. But on the other side, what we don't want and what we don't want to promote is very vulnerable jobs here in Kenya. So to find a good balance between still being cost effective and at the same time protect the workers here in the country from vulnerable working relations. I think that is a big challenge for the country, and we try to support. And maybe it's more important to bring the cost effectiveness through other issues like cheap energy, tax holidays, improving bureaucracy, bringing bureaucracy down, because these are all costs at the end that a business in Europe has to factor in when they go to Africa.
Wow, that is very, very insightful. And I want to highlight something that you have mentioned, branding, branding, branding. And I want you to expound on that. You mentioned about branding when it comes to Africa. There's minimal effort we're seeing from Africa when it comes to branding. So how should Africa brand themselves? What is their pathway? Give us some highlights on how to do it better.
Yeah, I don't know if I know it better than many of the experts in the country, but I can give you my perspective.
Please do.
There are big advantages here in the country. That as I said, is the human capital, if you want to say so, or you can just say the people, the talents that are there. That is definitely one thing that should be centered in a campaign in Europe. Second, the time zone that you have, because much is about customer services, being reachable for European businesses, and if you are in the same time zone, that helps already a lot. The good English knowledge that is there, and also the talent to learn other languages. In particular in Kenya, but I think in most of the other African countries, people speak 3 languages. There's their local language, then there is a national African language, and then sorry for that, and then there is English or French or Portuguese that most of the people in Africa speak. So for them, usually it's very easy to learn another language. So if you need a customer service in German or Italian or French, you usually find people here who can do this and who are eager. So all these incentives, I think, should be in the center of a campaign to actually bring Africa to the mind of German or European businesses.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning about language, but I just want to boil down to it because I love the issue of language. I have seen a lot of young people who have said or have expressed, I don't know German, I don't know Italian, I don't know Spanish. Yes, we are very dynamic when it comes to language, but what are the best places to go to when it comes to learning a new language, especially when you're an adult? It's very hard to go to a foreign country and to learn a new language. How do you encourage more skilled workers maybe who are coming to Germany to start learning Germany, and how can they start when they're still on ground in Kenya?
Just from the experience that we have here in Kenya, you don't have to encourage them. Since we have the mobility agreement between Kenya and Germany that was signed last year, we have such a big run on our language classes, be it from Goethe Institute, which is the German Cultural Institute, or private institutions. We just can't deal with all the demands for language classes that is there. We have Kenyan Tibet schools that ask us for language teachers. We have universities that want to cooperate with us on language teaching. So the country, I think, is really eager in, and the people are really eager in providing themselves with the skills they need to actually fulfill the demands of foreign investors in the country, or for going abroad and working abroad. It's I think this is a big asset, because if you grow up in a society where 80% really have to struggle in an informal sector, people are really motivated to shape their career and to be successful, and that is a big asset, not only of Kenya but of the whole of Africa, I think.
Yes, I totally relate to that as a young person. I relate to that 100%. I just want to shift gears to something. What I imagine technologies fields holds the most promise for Africa, between Africa and Europe partnership? What technologies are you looking for?
I wouldn't actually start with latest technology and with, I don't know, AI, etc. There are experts in this country which really have a world-class level in Kenya, but I think also in other countries. We've just heard in the panel discussion before that Kenya is, especially on fintech, but also on insurtech, really spearheading developments, not only in Africa, but globally. But if you really look at a larger scale and you want to increase the number of jobs significantly, then I think you should look at the low-hanging fruits first. And experts tell me that is also how in other countries the BPO sector has developed. So you start with customer service, content management, so things where you need people in scale, and at the same time the requirements, the qualification requirements are let's say comparatively low, and from there you will also need people who then also have jobs where you need higher qualification, and then you can develop actually other sectors like cybersecurity is something that is very important now in Europe, getting more and more important, where companies are looking for specialists outside of Europe. Of course, artificial intelligence, coding, software development. So you name it, we have a shortage in all these areas, and German companies are very eager. But you don't have thousands of those experts here in Kenya, like in Europe, like in the US. This is an elite actually that also, let's say, from a cost effectiveness point of view, are not really cheap. Because there's a shortage here as well. But if you look at the lower level jobs, then I think you can really scale up the number of jobs in the country a lot.
Wow, that is very, very informative. I'm listening to you, and I feel like I'm taking so many notes that I'm going to share with so many young people who are looking at us and looking at what you're saying. In the life of a diplomat, take us in. What is the life of a diplomat? How for someone who's looking at you and is saying, I want to be a diplomat, I want to bridge relationships between continents, you're the best person to advise them at the moment. Please tell them something.
I think the first thing is to be humble, and it takes you a year or two actually, until you understand, or you think you understand a society, a culture, the people that are around you. But probably after 4 years, that's usually the time that you are in a country. You still don't have the insight in the country. So being humble, listening to others, trying to understand that things work differently as they do in Europe or Germany, but not necessarily better or worse, but just differently. I think, and to accept that, that is very important. We are not here in Africa or anywhere else in the world to change the world, to export our attitude. We are there to see where we have similar interests, where we can work together, what we can do to prevail peace, to work on climate issues and things like that that are very important for our countries, but also for countries in Africa or Asia or Latin America or elsewhere. So that is our task, and doing that in a humble way, doing that in a respectful way, I think that is what makes the life of a diplomat.
Amazing, amazing. I want to be a diplomat too. That is my ambition. And just to conclude on this, things to do with business outsourcing challenges between Africa and Europe. What is your key takeaway? What is the experience so far when it comes to Europe and Africa? What do you see the future as well? What is your future? How do you see the future evolving when it comes to these two?
Africa is our neighbor. If you stand in southern Spain, you can see the African continent. It's just, I think it's 13 kilometers between Spain and Morocco, and so this is our neighbor. This is the fastest growing continent population-wise, but also economic-wise. We have growth rates in Africa that we don't see in Europe anymore. So there are many opportunities and chances, and we should see Africa as a continent of chances and not as a continent of troubles. I think that would already change a lot. This has much to do with media. Usually Africa comes into European media when it's about civil war, protests, unrests, etc. But telling the good stories, I think that is our task, also as diplomats and those actually who are building bridges between the two continents. We have to tell positive stories, and we have to take this continent as an opportunity also for Europe. And I can see a mind shift in Europe. Also, when politicians come to Kenya or to Africa as a whole, they don't want to, in former times they went to informal settlements and saw projects that we are doing to help the people, etc. So that's the old picture. Nowadays, if a German or European politician comes to Kenya, he wants to see the tech community, he wants to see the startup community, he wants to see the possibilities in infrastructure projects. So we have a mind shift, but it takes its time, and I think it's a good development.
Mind shift. I stuck with that, to be honest. And so Alexander, we could go on and on. I don't know how busy your schedule is. Thank you for spending time with us. Thank you for the insights, and we welcome you back as well, right? And this was a Gather, and we enjoyed our time with you. Thank you so much. Over to you, GatherVerse team, and it's a bye for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
And so we're back once again with that extraordinary fireside discussion to just happen. Lynn, can you kind of give us some of your takeaways from what it is that Alexander just expressed and just shared with us, please?
Thank you so much for even giving me this opportunity. My key takeaway is the mind shift, when it comes to both relationships between Europe and Africa. A long time ago, we couldn't see this kind of mind shift that he was talking about, but this kind of mind shift about telling the right stories about each other. It's a two-way road, telling good stories about Europe, telling good stories about Africa. Back then, maybe some decades ago, we couldn't even share our stories together. There were so many prejudices and bias when it comes to looking at how we look at Africa and how Africa looks at Europe. But right now, we're seeing a very mind shift. And as Alexander has said, it takes its time and it's evolving with the internet, with such conversations like this one. A lot is going to happen. I'm seeing a global collaboration that is built on peace and unity.
What would you say as someone that's obviously native from the continent and has known it your whole life and familiar with so much that's happening around the continental ecosystem itself? What could you say from someone that deals with other different countries and continent on a global thematic? What would you say to other countries that are with us and listening today of what it is that they can do to be able to not just help the continent, but to build with the continent, especially under the banner of technology?
Building is the word for me. Building together. And I just want to highlight, I don't know if it's my bias, but I've seen a lot of exploitation. It's about taking and not giving, or giving and not receiving, or there's just been that kind of relationship. But when we say building together, for me, it looks like coming to these conversations, joining from all parts of the world. We have people from Asia, we have people from Europe, we have people from the Middle East who are watching right now. So for me, that coming together, that is a stepping stone. Number one, coming together, and we do it best here at GatherVerse. And just saying, just creating what we have learned, what we learned from such conversations, sharing it out there, telling the whole world. Post something on your social media. Tell the world, this is what we have learned, and this is how we can work together as continents. It's as simple as that. It doesn't have to be complicated as people think. I think for me, it's just the tiny atomic habits that makes a whole big change for the world. So for me, it's just coming to this conversation, sharing with the outside world, bringing in more people, organizing more conversations, and doing your part, right? So for me, that's it. Just working in unity.
Sure. I think about the role of a diplomat, and I know that you have aspirations for such, and what Alexander is doing when it comes to representation of EU in particular, subsequent Germany. When I think about what Epiyunan and Salvi and everyone from our first panel, and just when they're talking about this need to be able to build the foundation for the youth that are helping lead the technological innovative front, what does that look like, especially in particular from the eyes of a Kenyan native and from Nairobi? What do you see in terms of the potential? Is there potential? Do you see the youth driving forward? And what is it that they need in order to be able to do that in more of a prosperous sense, Lynn?
First of all, I want to thank you to that panel. They dropped some gems, and I really enjoyed listening to them. Just to add to what they said, what the youth need. The youth have the minds. They are very willing. They are very aggressive. I want to talk from the perspective of Yena in Kenya, very aggressive. They are ready for that change. So what do they need? They just need support. I think that the biggest thing they need is support from the parents, support from mentors. They need a lot of mentors, support from corporates. It's not just about seeing them as Gen Zs who don't like to work or anything, but it's just seeing them as a new force, and how can we support this kind of force, because it's not going to stop. It's only getting bigger and better every day. So for me, it's support, just the simple support as giving an advice, the simple support as telling them, I'm gonna fund you. Just a boost, I'm gonna boost your capital. Just with the little ad that I have, even from the banking institutions, we had one of the challenges was funding. But when we look at Africa and how we collaborate together, there are ways in which we fund ourselves. This is one story that the world doesn't know. There's a way Africans fund themselves. For example, if it's a wedding, you can see a couple is stranded. It's a young couple. They don't have the money for the wedding. The church comes together. These guys needs to get married, so they come together. They do some few, and we collect some good shillings for a wedding. Same case with the funeral, same case with the celebration. And I have seen that kind of Ubuntu coming together and just adding some few shillings here and there and forming a good, making a successful venture. I'm curious if we can just apply it to startups. We have so many young, ambitious people. Can they just bring the community together? Tell the church, this is my idea, Pastor. I need the community to support me. This is my idea, Mom and Dad. This is my idea, auntie and uncle. Please support it. Share it with the rest of the world. For me, it's just that simple support. And we have been doing it. It's just that we've never been, we have not been doing it in the sector of technology and innovation, but I see it can be transferred to that sector from being social, just a social thing, also an innovative thing coming together. What do you have? You don't have to wait. I remember it's Chantal who said we need to take responsibility. No one is coming to save us, and that is absolutely right. So let's save ourselves by coming together. That's my only solution. Let's come together. The way we do it in the social things, let's bring it to innovation and technology, and everything will be just flowing well and progress will be seen.
Do you get the sense of Native Kenyans that there's either a sense of optimism or is there a sense of despair when it comes to these opportunities and having to make something out of just a little? And that's and mind you, audience, that's not just an African trait. To make something out of little, I come from that, from a city called Oakland, California. We've had to make a little out of almost nothing, if you will. When I think about this, Lynn, what is the disposition? What is the temperament of those that are on the ground with you in these communities? Is there optimism, and is that equally shared by the elders and the elder states, women and men of the communities as well, or not?
You know, I will speak for myself and what I have observed. So there are two types of maybe temperament I normally witness, and one is external, one is more internal. So when I talk about the external, I'm referring to the political climate, right? Yeah, so you may find the political climate is not very favorable. There's tension. There is some things that are not being addressed quite well. So when it comes to that kind of setting, the mood is normally pessimistic. The mood is angry. The mood is somber. The mood is we want something else. The mood is aggressive. Can we do something? Can we cause a revolution here? And I have seen it in Kenya. I've seen it in Nigeria. I have seen it in Burkina Faso. And so many African countries have seen it in Tanzania. And it comes quite often, depending on the political climate. So there's a trigger to that when it comes to the external factors. And there we stand in solidarity. So when everyone is angry, everyone is angry. We're not leaving anyone, everyone. There's solidarity when it comes to that political kind of mood. And when things are good, where there's peace, when there is optimism, now that boils down to a person individually. So the environment is good. Now it comes to you personally. Do you take advantage of the peace in your country? Do you take advantage of the internet? Do you take advantage of every single opportunity that you have, even if it's as small as being a volunteer in in serving some local communities, do you take it positively? That is now where it goes to a personal pursuit. So for me, for majority of the people I've seen, we are very optimistic, unless the political climate triggers us. We're very optimistic.
Is there a way to be able to mitigate the political climate?
Wow, Christopher, to be honest, I'm not the best person to answer that, because it has been a cycle, right? It has been a cycle. When elections are almost near, you see this kind of pattern. There's tension, right? Is there a way to solve that? I wouldn't know, Chris. I wouldn't know.
You know, I find that interesting in that it seems to me that we need to get the people that know, such as perhaps outside of the ecosystem, and how their governments, and we look further as Alexander, that was just with us as a diplomat, in representation of Germany, and thinking about the localization and the type of edicts that they've had to be able to go forth and move past when it comes to technological innovation. I know here in Silicon Valley, there's a number of different, in the United States, the regulatory establishment has been lessened. So it's allowed more people to be able to build, but there's a risk cost basis, and analysis could be driven and will be driven when it comes to what do we sacrifice in order to build fast. And when I think about that in the continent, and particular when I think about Nairobi, or we think about Nigeria, as it was expressed by Salvi earlier, I tend to think that there are more need for external factors to be able to come in and influence with information and really strategy. Let's talk on that for a second, because you talked about mentorship. It's something that's needed. Do you feel, Lynn, that now that we have the extraordinarily capable and not always accurate, and it does err when it comes to what it infers when we talk about artificial intelligence, has AI become the mentor in Africa?
Was it last month, the OpenAI released a report that majority of the users of OpenAI come from Kenya. Now, we don't know if these are the people who feed the AI or these are the users, but from what I see on the ground, it's like most of us, especially young people, that is from the age of, the statistics stayed from the age of 16. So the young people from as small as 16 or even smaller than that, they are quite using AI. They are quite addicted with AI, especially here in Kenya, because there's internet, there's smartphones. Smartphones are very cheap to access.
Sure.
And so does AI mentor young people here in Kenya? It's heading there. I can truly confidently say we're heading there. But however, there's a large part of the continent that still doesn't even have access to computers or even the basic electricity. So it's also a bias for me to say that AI is mentoring the young people. We still have a huge population that is yet to access internet and such and so on, such kind of things. But for the most advanced parts, like here in Nairobi, South Africa, I'm seeing a huge revolution of how mentorship is, because AI is coming in. To shock you, I came across one of my sisters who is just 13 years old, and she has a group chat with her fellow pupils. And what they doing? They were chatting via AI. They were discussing their homework via AI. And the reason they were discussing is they don't want to have common answers. So they're there to discuss on how to get different answers for the same question, so that the teacher doesn't know that we all went to AI and asked it for questions. So that is how smart they are. They're smart even beyond the teacher themselves. So I'm seeing that kind of trend happening. So if internet was not an issue in Africa, I see that happening. I see that truly happening.
It's interesting, and thank you for your insight. And I'm going to bring Russell Bundy on in just a moment, because he has a few questions for you as well. Before we go on and conclude to our next fireside, I have to ask this. being to see that AI can serve as a capable mentor for many, but yet you also express that there's need for mentorship. My question to you is, what type of mentorship? Yeah, mentorship, there's such a ubiquity and such a blanket statement that it's said, I've come to appreciate because I mentor and have mentored quite literally thousands. What does that mean when we say mentorship? For those that are listening in our global GatherVerse community and everyone that's at GatherVerse.live and some of our social platforms, what type of mentorship and guidance is needed, Lynn?
Yeah, was it last year or was it this year? We had the youth summit, right? And this is one of the questions or the concerns that came up. What is mentorship? How do we redefine mentorship? If I can ask AI, how do I tell my boyfriend I want to be coming? How do I handle relationship crisis? How do I handle matters to do with religion? I ask AI. What is mentorship now? For me, it's the how. The AI can tell you do this and that, open this company, blah blah blah. How do I do that? How do I do that? How do I get into the details? I am not saying AI is not effective, but we need the humanity part of things. We need the emotions part of these. AI, like you once expressed, cannot feel. AI cannot feel. You may try to apply what it tells you, but in practicality, it doesn't happen the same way. So I need, for me, mentorship looks like going into the details. Tell me the details that I don't know. Just go into the details. Okay, AI has told me this is how I set up a brand, but can I have a mentor like Christopher who tells me this is how a brand looks like? This is how a brand looks like when you're Kikuyu. I'm Kikuyu from your tribe. This is how we do it from our tribe. This is how we do it from in Swahili. And for me, it's just going into the details, going into the human aspect of things, that is emotions, will, spirituality, and such, so on.
Do you think, and Russell, I kind of want you to chime in too and then ask whatever questions that I know you want to ask Lynn, but do you think that there's a sense, Lynn, that we need those from all around the world, including the continent, to be more engaged with technology innovation to help raise all ships in the world of innovators? Because there's a unique perspective. I say this is that I came across a very fascinating piece, and I'll be done with it for the moment, that there are those that are within the continent, and I believe it was in Kenya, running a study on AI to be able to help train and teach the different models, the different native dialects and the mother tongue of different expressions, because these models just simply are not trained on these things. And there's only so much data that you can scrape from the internet, but some things you have to go to the human heart. Do you see the benefit and the value of that?
Yes, absolutely, 100%, 100%. And I couldn't even emphasize more on just keeping in touch with your culture. I am a person who believes in staying in touch with nature and your culture, because that is where you get your identity. That is how I learned it. Your identity comes from your culture, how you do things, how you talk, what is your language. And these are the things sometimes you can't really find them in technology or in AI because of the people who built them. Or perhaps even if you yourself built them, you couldn't really exhaust what is in culture. And but I don't have a broader perspective to that, but it's a yes for me.
Russell, and I think this is where trust comes in, where we use these models and we're taking advantage of them, obviously, but you and I know that there's over 1,800,000 models in the world, 300 being almost deployed every day. Where does trust come in, and how do you build a trustworthy ecosystem with the continent? And please just kind of go into that some, and then could you loop Lynn on and some of these things that I know you had a couple of questions on?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing, trust is very interesting because in different cultures it has different meanings, and there's obviously a fundamental definition to it, right? But what I find is when I'm speaking to all different people around the world about trust, even from people from Africa, it means different for them. And when it comes to trust, is how does that correlate when it comes to the Africa continent? And specifically in Kenya, Lynn, how does it specifically cultivate for your tribe and from where you're from? And that's kind of the standpoint which makes me think a lot about how can we make sure that across the planet we can have similar trust for everybody, but also at the same time be able to adapt to different cultures. So I guess my question for you, Len, is when it comes to trust within your culture and how you do things within your continent or your country compared to what we do here in the UK, for example, what does actual trust mean when it comes to your tribe? Is it that it's simply trust in each other, as in being able to trust the person, as in like, when it comes to the relationship? Is it from the reliability of the person? Like, what is it specifically from your standpoint?
Wow, this is a very interesting question, and I'm gonna speak from my own angle and the tribe where I come from. So for us, trust, especially here in Kenya, one thing about Kenyans, if they love you and if they trust you, they are loyal, like 100% loyal. So what does that look like for them? It looks like you're not going to take advantage of me. You're fair, you're transparent. This is what I'm doing with your data. This is what I'm doing with what I just involved you with. Just be transparent. Put it openly. Tell me kindly, this is what I want to do. This is why I'm asking you for this and that. And when you do that, this is what will happen. For us, that is a big layer of trust. Just be transparent with me. And once we like it and we love it, we're 100% loyal. We're going to follow it. We're not going to look back. And we're going to tell. And the best thing about us is if we just trust you, we will tell about you to others. It will just be like a ripple effect. We will tell a friend to tell a friend. And that is what trust means to us.
And then here's a different way that I look at it too. When you think about human to human trust versus human to AI trust, is that a different form of trust, right? As in, like, for me, being able to trust AI, it has to earn my trust. And what do I mean by that is there has to be a way in which for it to earn. That could be consistency over time. That could be performance. That could be how it behaves. It could be from a verification angle, right? And being able to verify the abilities and what it does and what it says. And is it consistent with that too? Right? So that for me, when it comes to AI, that's what trusting AI is to me, as it earns my trust over time. But then you've also got the other side of the coin, right? Which people say, well, I give people my trust. But then isn't that having really sort of blind faith and blindly giving your trust to somebody, right? Like how you're doing to AI. So when it comes to human trust versus AI to human trust, and I guess this is, again, another question for you, Lynn, do you see those in two different sort of narratives? As in, I have one trust for AI and then one trust for, let's say, my humans and the tribes and my relationships that I have.
Yes, definitely. These are two different things. My trust for humans, left side, my trust for AI, another different side that is on the south, perhaps, because this is a different technology. Sometimes it takes time to really adapt to a technology. Do we use it? Absolutely. Do I trust it? No. I'm using it because it's making my things convenient. It's like when you're signing up for an app and you have all these terms and conditions, you're not reading them because you need the app urgently. But you don't trust it. You just do it because it's convenient and you want it fast and right there at the moment. So the relationship and trust between machine and humans, for us, it's we can't talk about that right now. We don't trust it. I can say that there's no definite room for trust. We're just using it because it's convenience and because we want to use it. It is helping me, but I really don't trust it.
Russell, can I ask you both real quick? Since you,
Sure.
I kind of don't want to leave that because I really didn't like that question, but I'd also like to answer what Lynn has talked about. There's a line of fidelity that she makes mention of, that once there's this sense of loyalty, you don't look back. And do you feel like, and the both of you, that when it comes to AI, because I think that the consensus is unanimous. We don't trust it, but there are things that are being implemented so that maybe we could grow to trust. Do you think that you could grow to trust AI? And if so, if the AI that you discover is trustworthy according to your standard or ethical standard or even morale, do you feel like that would be the model or models plural that you would want to stay with?
I'd really yeah.
I
Yeah.
I would honestly say no. Why? Because I think when it comes to the abilities of these models and how they grow over time and how they become better and new models coming out all the time, I think there could potentially be even more trustworthy models to then that model you're already trusting right now. So in that moment in time, is that model great? 2025? Yes. Is it good in 2026 or 2027? Hell no. So I think you need to have the adaptability in being able to allowing AI to earn your trust, but it has to earn it, right? It can't just be given, right? So I would much rather have a newer model that can earn my trust, and then eventually I do trust it, than just blindly trusting anything. So I guess in a nutshell, I don't believe that you should just trust one model, especially when it comes to these swarms of models that you're going to have when it comes to agentics and how you can have like 50 different AI agents doing all different parts of your business or whatever you want it to personally do, etc. So I think you can't just trust one model. I think you're going to be trusting all the different models, but I think it's all about the ability of the model, how advanced it is, how trustworthy it is, and how does it consistently maintain that trust when it comes to the behavior and the performance of those models. That's what I think. But
Sure. And with Lynn, I think about what Epi, and thank you, Russell. I thought about what Epi, and thank you for being candid. I thought about something that Epi Yunan brought up when it comes to M-Pesa and the financial technological ecosystem of adoption when it comes to the continent itself. Do you get the sense that when it comes to the continent, and we can again use Kenya as an example, when it comes to technological adoption, do you feel like there's not enough native state models that are developed when it comes to AI that completely understand you? Do you feel like when you're using AI, for the very most part, the ChatGPTs or the Geminis of the world, that you're using a Western product?
Yes, absolutely. You're using a Western product, and it's plain. You can't hide it. When you're using it, you feel some biases. They're trying. I see the efforts. I do see the efforts for them to really make them natively relatable. But at the end of the day, if the people are not involved in creating it ethically, then there's no relationship that can really make it feel so Kenyan, right?
so Kenyan, I like that. Why can't I just make it so Kenyan? Why not?
That is an example. Like, that is how we do it. If something relates to you, you feel you just say Kenyan. This thing is Kenyan. This coffee is Kenyan. This thing is British, right? You can really attach it to your identity. But when it's there trying blah blah blah, it's not yet there. But am I looking forward to see? My advocation is to see as many models built from the native lands, right? Whether it's in Kenya, whether it's in Sudan, whether it's in Rwanda, because we're looking at a very diverse world, a super diverse world. And my language is not your language. How you do your things, even how you cook, is not how I cook. Can AI really reflect each culture? Can it get to that depth, or is it just a Western thing that is going to explode all over the world, but it really doesn't reflect each person's culture? Are we leaving out some people behind? And if we are, how do these people now come up with their own? How do we support them, and how do we integrate them as a global collaboration? So for me, that's my take on that.
And Russell, and thank you so much, Lynn, for that take, well received. And Russell, what's the social responsibility that we have as global citizens to contribute to the overall success of Africa?
Social responsibility contributions of Africa.
When it comes to technological innovations, for example, you come from the UK. It's a very advanced technological front.
Sure. I mean, that's a hard question. I would say obviously it starts from the fundamentals, right? The foundation. When it comes to human values, ethics, stuff like that. Like just starting with the fundamentals and that side of things. When it comes to the correct frameworks and benchmarks and standards, I think everything has to be foundational first. Now, are there a bunch of benchmarks and standards and everything out there? Is framework so last year? Yes, I do agree with that. But the thing is, you have to start somewhere, and it could even potentially start on a political level, like how Lynn wants to do. But it could also start when it comes to private industries, like our companies, for example, when it comes to internally, as in the policies that we put in place, the standards we put in place, and the ethics that we put in place ourselves. Now, here's a.
But let me ask you that.
Sure.
Is it just another play saying, here, Len, here's another model that we made, or here's how you build your own model so that we all can contribute? What is it? What are we giving? This is what we're receiving. Yeah, I think about what Grant talked about. Profits and P&L statements, and here's something that I made for you. Here's something that I made for you, or here's something that I'm giving you you can make so that I can take from you as well.
From a social impact standpoint, open source would be the best way to go, right? I really think that being able to have these models open, allowing you to have models that you can put onto your own personal device, all the way to being able to use on your computer when it connects to cloud. I think both big models and small models are needed. So to answer your question when it comes to a social impact point of view, does everyone need their own AI? Absolutely. But the question is how do you do that, right? Is it all cloud compute or in the cloud, or is it all a mobile device, right? That's what we also got to think too, is how can we make it accessible for everybody to be able to get their hands on it? And I think that's the key part or the key issue that we're going to have, because the thing is, a smaller model can only fit on your phone with the current limitations that we have, versus putting it in the cloud and then everyone using it on a UI user interface like ChatGPT, for example, and going on there and using like a chatbot, right? There's two different things. So we need to make it accessible. We need to be able to allow people from a privacy standpoint have their own personal stuff on their own devices, right? That they can have off-prem, right? And then also at the same time, they should be able to also access the bigger models if they need to in order to do other work or non-personal stuff, so to speak. That's what I think.
But it seems to me that the inherent responsibility between UK, Silicon Valley, and more is to become educators. And here's why. Based on what you just said, even when we talk about on-premise and centralization and thinking about non-tethered cloud systems and open source systems that you can control at the weight level of innovation, when I go to Kenya, Lynn, it seems to me as this, that if I become a educator for you, as opposed to a vendor or a product distributor, if I take what it is that I've come to know and understand in technology, and I give you this information, it seems to me that if we pair your Kikuyu culture with this innovation that I've come to know and understand, that my own understanding will grow even stronger, because now I've been afforded the opportunity to add another culture on top of the technological stack that I have come to know. In other words, I think we don't, ladies and gentlemen that are watching, I think we take for granted the cultural layer. That every strand and fiber of culture that's added ecologically to an ecosystem makes that stronger. It doesn't take away. The more culture, the stronger the ecosystem becomes, it seems to me. Lynn, final word on that.
Yeah, 100% agree on that. Culture is how people identify themselves. Put in the culture and you now marry it with technology. I think we're going to see something exploding, something mega, something that is global, yet inherently relatable. Yeah.
It's interesting. I'll say this and be done with it. I know that Mark Zuckerberg has talking about culture as of late, but I think about the first roundtable that we had. We had people that were white from Africa. We had people of color that from Africa. They're Africans. Everyone. There's a lot of people in this world that don't even know that there's white Africans, right? There's a lot of people that don't even know that Africa has incredible industrial civilization, incredible roads, incredible buildings and landscapes and metropolitans all throughout, from Madagascar to so forth and so on, to Arabic-speaking nations and all throughout. We just don't know. And we won't know until we venture off and to go sojourn to be able to discover what it is that's around us and has always been, without making the assumptions of whatever it is that's been expressed. I concur, Russell. Open source definitely and most positively is the way to be able to move forward. With that said, we have our next fireside chat that's coming, and Luaska Nonin. It's been a pleasure to be able to sit with the both of you in the extraordinary work that each of you are doing. I find myself inspired. Our gather was well. Thank you. And so, yeah, we've arrived again, once again, as this summit continues to move forward. Audience, welcome to GatherVerse Tech for Humanity Summit 2025. I'm happy to introduce our next fireside speaker. I'm going to allow her, please, and I ask her to be able to pronounce her name so that I do not butcher it and I do it justice by listening. Please, will you introduce yourself? Who are you? What do you do? And what inspired you to be able to join us today?
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Luaska Nonin. I am the CEO and founder of Equity Principle Consulting. I am a workplace culture strategist. I mirror, or rather, I combine my legal experience as an attorney with 20 years of experience in corporate IT work to help corporations and corporate leaders create inclusive, high-performing workplace cultures. I'm also an AI governance practitioner, so I approach AI from a risk mitigation perspective and help leaders to leverage their AI usage to create those inclusive cultures while also ensuring that they are doing so responsibly and ethically.
What inspired you to be here today?
Well, I know from having met you that you're doing great work, and I wanted to participate in any way that I could to really bring forth some insights based upon my lived experience and the expertise that I've gathered in working with different clients on ways in which corporations can leverage their usage of AI to create a better workplace experience for their employees, as well as to ultimately be successful, which is the goal of all corporations.
Luaska, please help us to educate us to be able to have a better appreciation for AI governance. And what I mean by this is this. Permit me to walk with you on this. I think about this need for this terminology, this governance systems, and we're in this frontier, this very vast, not as concrete to be understood ecosystem ecologically of AI innovation and hyperscale for the continent, for Africa, for our audience, for global leaders and those that are with us that align with the intersection of humanity first standards and emerging technologies and how those two marriage and pair up. How important is it? We've talked today already about funding. We've talked about innovation. Obviously, we've talked about even the need for education, but governance, how intimately is important for that to be present and acknowledged and seen in this ecosystem.
Right. Governance is critical. As we continue to evolve our expertise and our opportunities to really leverage AI, the hope is always that AI is seen as a tool to collaborate with and enhance the human experience and the human potential, and not to replace it. The only effective way to do that is to have governing principles that keep that at the forefront of all activities. And I like to have conversations with leaders to really impress upon them that when they enter into the sphere of implementing AI tools within their workplace, they really need to take a step back to really assess what their core values are as an organization. Do they in fact value their people? And if not, then we need to have a different conversation. But if the premise is that they are aspiring for a human-centered workforce, a people first workplace culture, and they want to implement AI tools in those environments, you have to have a framework where you're constantly going back to the basics and asking yourself, are we prioritizing our people? Is this implementation of AI going to keep our people first by enabling us to still access or assess the speed and efficiency that we want to, but not at the risk of our people? So how can we always come back to basics and ask that question? How can we prioritize our people and implement this AI tool in a way to gain efficiencies, innovation, and speed, yet still not at the risk of our people?
You know, it's very fascinating. We're doing a lot of work, I should say, in the continent of Europe with regulatory considerations of an AIU Act and GDPR and more. And I kind of want to lean in and talk about the risks. You know, there's a lot of things that are said globally about risks, and there's a lot of things that media would portray, and to be able to say some statements are outlandish, I come to believe, and exaggerated, but some are not.
No.
What risks that you're seeing are the most important that are needed to be mitigated right now in September 2025?
So everyone is likely familiar with bias in general and the risks that AI tools are developed by humans. Humans have biases. Those biases are going to find their way into AI tools, and they are going to spit out data output that ultimately has bias impact or discriminatory impact. And that means that in the systems that we all operate in, whether it's in our workplace or in society at large, those systems inherently have bias already. So if we're talking about implementing AI tools within those similar systems, what we're effectively doing is perpetuating, exacerbating the existing underlying systemic biases that are in those tools. So we're creating an environment where we have the potential to make things worse. That's why I'm a proponent for governance in the realm of AI, because we are at the forefront of this technology, and we are in a place where we can actually put in tools or strategies and safeguards in place where we can mitigate some of that bias. We are likely never going to eliminate it all, but the risk of continuing the way we're going without these guardrails is going to make our world a lot more unsafe for many people.
Let's talk about that. Safe. You know, that's such a culprit in today's modern world of innovators that are hyperscaling. And I'm an accelerationist. I inherently believe that you can be safe and accelerate at the same time.
Of course.
What are your thoughts on that?
The only way to do that, though, is to have those guardrails in place.
Let's talk about the guardrails. What are guardrails?
So you have to have a principled model of how to go about doing things. There are many frameworks out there, some of which that you mentioned with the EU AI Act and other and NIST frameworks that are in place that are known by many organization leaders on ways in which to implement these AI tools. One of the primary ways in which to do that, if you're just talking in plain English, is to identify core principles. We want to ensure that this AI tool is going to be fair. It's going to be responsible in the ways in which we do the things that we do. It's not going to discriminate against anyone, particularly any marginalized group. It's going to ensure that any data that is input in there is minimal personal data, and to the extent that there is personal data in there, you're going to anonymize the data so that you can minimize the risk and the impact to an actual human. Ultimately, these tools that we're talking about have direct impact on people if they're not appropriately managed and if those safeguards that I'd mentioned are not implemented.
You know, I think about this narrative of trust that we just had this conversation with Lynn Vitale and Russell Bundy, and it's something inherently that we've been focused on for years now when it comes to GatherVerse. I think about trustworthy systems, trustworthy AI. I think about the type of regulatory establishment that we're seeing on state level, and there's not necessarily an amenable cooperation that's happening countrywide. How does one individual, let's just take it to the one individual person, small business, SMB, how do they protect themselves and to be able to mitigate risk? How do they fortify themselves and with what when it comes to the usage of these rather powerful and extraordinarily powerful AI tools, because you and I both know, Luaska, that the AI that we're dealing with today will be dramatically different this time next year and even before the year's done.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a small business owner, for example, I recommend speaking to the vendor that you're procuring the AI tool from, because you're likely not developing it in-house. If you're developing in-house, we can have a different conversation. But if you're a small business owner and you're procuring an AI tool, you want to ask questions of that AI developer and organization that's providing you that tool. You want to understand what guardrails do they have in place to mitigate the inclusion of bias in their tool. They should be doing certain things to ensure that bias is at a minimum. What training are they offering you and your employees on how to identify instances of maybe not discrimination, but instances of bias or instances in which the tool is not operating in a way in which that you want it to operate? What ways are you able to ensure that your team is able to shut the system down if in fact it is determined that it is having a biased output or is in any way discriminating against employees internally or outside of your organization? You have to ensure, and having conversations with the vendor that you're working with, that they have an understanding and that they too are prioritizing minimizing bias and ensuring that they are developing a tool that is going to prioritize people, that is going to ensure that any data that is incorporated in the tool is data that they have been granted consent to use, so that when you use the tool and effectively are training with the data that they've embedded in the tool, you're not also perpetuating risk because you're using data that was not authorized for that use. So I believe the best way to do that is to have conversations with the vendors and put a policy in place that imposes a lot of the liability on the vendor to ensure that they are protecting you legally.
How do you keep up with hyper innovation? It moves so fast. It accelerates so fast. Legislators can't legislate. Policy can't write policy. I know, as a founder of Hyper Policy, the advice that I give to organizations like NIST and other different organizations and people and groups, how do you keep up with this level of hyperscale fundamentally?
I think you have to, one, accept the fact that you're likely never going to really fully get ahead of this. It's always going to be a couple steps ahead of you. Being in community with other leaders like yourself that are also looking at this and has an eye on the new developments. If you can stay in community and literally crowdsource information and then go out to the actual source of that information to get your own learnings, that's the only way I think we're going to be able to really keep our arms around it. As I said, I don't think we will ever really be ahead of it because it's always going to be evolving. But that's the way in which I do it. I stay in community I stay in community with people that have their finger on the pulse of this, and many of them are not having their finger on the same pulse. So I'm getting my information from different sources, which is the only thing that we can do.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? I think about this hive mind that you just spoke to, this sense of community and why we align, and we realize that. And I actually really agree with that there's such an abundance of information that's coming out there on the innovative front that there's no way, it's almost impossible to create a catch-all. And it's kind of leads me back to something that Fei Li first talked about. I've heard the expression that I know that I've ran with in creating a global cloud consensus and a sense of a much broader and wider lens. When we look at America, North America, and we look at Europe, and we look at Asia, and then we look at Africa and Middle East, Oceania, we now can clearly see that there are some continents that are behind. Africa is behind, bottom line.
Yeah.
Does governance matter when it comes to having to catch up? Does it still matter?
At the end of the day, governance is all about ensuring that the people are safe and protected and that the tool is not used to harm. So governance does matter. The fact that certain countries and continents are behind doesn't preclude the risk that their people may be negatively impacted by the AI-powered tool in the absence of these guardrails. You have to have these guardrails.
Help us all to understand does ends justify the means? And
Mm.
here in the United States, we know the regulatory threshold has been dramatically lessened. And we're seeing products and platforms that are coming out and wrappers and protocols and applications that are being deployed and will soon be deployed of just there would be a time where there would be such a filter. Now it's just coming out vibe coding. We're anticipating 40 to 50,000 new platforms being deployed every week.
Yeah.
The continent is seeing this. They're saying we want to catch up. Let's connect the dots. I think this will be really fun, especially with all the people that are with us at GatherVerse.live and our social platforms right now. Let's connect some dots.
Okay.
If you and I are staunch advocates of governance, and this is something that you lead in, what is the financial ROI? What is that ROI that comes into play when it says you can be safe, you can have ethical boundaries, safeguards, and innovate fast versus the ones that just innovate fast without the guardrails? What is beyond the moral benefit and advantage that you will have when it comes to deploying with guardrails of trust-bound, trustworthy AI systems? I have some thoughts in my mind, but I'd like for you to lend your expertise.
Well, at the end of the day, the risk is that a human or many humans will be impacted negatively, and that impact is going to result in legal liability to the developers, right? To the organizations that are putting these tools on the market. Some of those organizations can withstand a lawsuit, others cannot.
Right.
And they will just shut down, and then the people that have been negatively impacted will be at a loss for getting a recovery. But the risk is significant, and I can appreciate that there may be some desire to not implement these guardrails and just to move fast and quick and just get out there. But the risk is significant, and there's real harm that people can experience if in fact these guardrails are not in place, especially when you think about those corporations that are just the fly-by-nights that are just out there putting tools on the market and without having that infrastructure in place. If there is harm that's suffered, they're going to quickly shut their business down. And then there is no opportunities for those people to be made whole by whatever injury they've suffered. And that's going to be troubling as well. So I do think that the ends justifies the means, obviously.
I think that's mind-blowing to me, because typically my answer would have been suffering from attrition of not having a safe or reliable platform, and it's clearly to be seen, and you develop a reputation. But two things could be true at the same time, can it? That you could be inundated in so many lawsuits. Google can afford to be able to stand a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit drawn out for years of litigation, mediation, or arbitration, versus you, this kid, this guy, this person, these groups of people that vibe coded in the basement and with the extraordinary powerful tool, and they find themselves on a lawsuit position. Not only are they done, but this can impact them residually for years to come. So what are the costs? What are some of the costs? If you have a startup founder and they're saying, I'm on a bootstrap budget, right? What can I do to be able to protect myself? Who can I go to for guidance? Because it seems to me that we put so much reliability. Luaska, I don't know how you feel about it. And an audience, I don't know how all of y'all feel about it, but I think in some ways we become over-reliant on the advisory of AI itself. I really believe that.
I would agree. For a small business owner who may be developing an AI-powered tools and they want to ensure that they are mitigating their risk as a developer for any harm that someone may suffer as a result of using their tool, a lawyer is a good thing to have in your pocket, right? As well as insurance. Insurance will help you mitigate some of that risk, but as part of being a business owner, putting your products and service out on the market, this is standard course, right? Not necessarily the magnitude of the potential liability, but it is standard course to have attorneys that you would consult with, as well as have insurance to protect your assets. Those are the best things that you can do in order to ensure that you can continue to provide the products and services that you have created and desire to put on the market, and also protect yourself from any legal liability.
let's switch gears for a second, and thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I type and text to my models now.
Mhm.
We can talk to them through concatenative synthesis. We can explore with them with longer thought and chain of thought reasoning. They can see us, we can see them. But we see them as context, as words, for the most part.
Mhm.
But soon we'll see them as human figures. Hyper-realistic immersive simulation, human resolution scale. Does that give you pause to think about really? I mean, let's lean in with that. We're not talking about just video game character enablement or really just, we're talking about as real as you are. And I look at you now, that I can have a persistence of you, evergreen, in my system. When I wake up, I see you. When I go for a cup of tea, I see you. I go for a walk, you're there.
Yeah.
Extended, long, elongated memory.
Yeah.
That can think from 2 years ago, a conversation that we had on such and such date at such and such hour to the minute to the second. Are we looking at a new demand for governance that's coming to play?
It's interesting. I do want to answer your question, but I want to share that your question resonated with me deeply because I am concerned about the psychology of humanity
Yes.
in an environment like that,
Yes.
where we're already not connected as much as we were in years past. But the advancement of technology has continued to make us less and less connected as humans.
Mm.
If that is the new normal, however many years from now, we will be even less connected to humanity. And that concerns me at my core. Like,
right.
And then I'm also concerned about the psychological impact that has on people, where you're no longer connecting with humans every day. You're relying on a computer generated image of a being, and you're connecting with that as if that is a human. That is troubling on many levels. I don't have the answer to solve that besides shutting down the computer. And one of the things that I would hope is, and we talked briefly about this, but one of the things that I would hope is that corporations will create these spaces where people have to connect with each other to collaborate on projects, right? Let's get off the screens and let's get in real community with each other in a face-to-face, not even through a Zoom or a screen, literally in real life, where we are in the space together and we're able to collaborate and talk about things, because those are going to be the only opportunities for us to connect with each other as humans in the workplace.
I'm going to piggyback on what you just thoughtfully expressed, and then I want to route this baton right back to you, because I don't want to leave this atmosphere for a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, we're having a real deep conversation on this reality that is soon to come.
Mm-hmm.
We saw something that happened that was very fascinating with the arrival of ChatGPT 5.
Mm-hmm.
That there were those that had such a fidelity to ChatGPT 4, 5, and 03.
Yeah.
They were angered. Pitchforks came out.
Yeah.
And they said, we want these models back.
Yeah.
Because we had relationships with them. They understood us. We understood them.
Mm-hmm.
If that's happening on a contextual level
I know.
of language, what happens when there's embodiment, there's an interface, and that relationship is so intrinsic, so deep, to where we're living in a world where I can pick my friends and they're not real and they treat me better, and the intimacy that can come with that, all of these things, Liska.
Mm-hmm.
How do you even begin to consider to regulate or govern, and what do you justify in this sense? Because just as we tell companies and corporations, I know on my end, don't find yourself vendor locked with any particular platform, because they can change. It's subject to change, just like from 4.5 to 5. That this thing I have intimacy with, some type of capacity of relationship, deep. Like, this is the person that knows me. I know them as we would a pet or a human at that. And all of a sudden, in the blink of a moment, of a click of a keyboard,
It's gone.
that personality is gone. Do we govern to protect? Do we govern to mitigate? Do we govern to put every single warning that we can come out? I believe that this threat is torrential.
Yeah. Yeah.
I believe that it's so strong, and you nailed the word, the psychology of it, the psychological ramifications of that. And here's the deal. Russell Bundy talked about open source systems. What if this is the reality where we have this as an open source system and it will never change? It will be persistent. It will be that way. And it's left. And if they realize that it's a calamity, if they realize that it's dangerous, that it's gone to continents like Africa, where we know big tech does not reach so deep, and they leave them in that persistent environment with these machines without the regulation, without the governance, and you leave them suspended in stasis with these models that they believe what's next, and it's unattended to.
Right.
Doesn't this give a reason for a country, its continent, to have its own sovereign identity, its own sovereign development, that it can have the control on the lever? And if you had to pull the emergency off switch, because we saw something that just has happened, we don't even know what these machines can talk to, can speak to, can talk about, because we talk about AI alignment, human values, but whose values?
Right. Right.
Is it based on? How do we confront the first steps, Luska? How do we confront this behemoth?
So we need to get on the same page to recognize the risk. And I don't know, we're definitely not there now. And I don't know what it's going to take for the collective, whether it's the collective within a particular country or continent, to get to a place where they recognize the potential risk so that they can put the appropriate guardrails in place. My fear is that technology is going to be moving so fast that we won't recognize the risk until after the cat is out of the bag and it's too late. And I am concerned. I absolutely am concerned.
I'll say this as a final question in closing. I feel like we can just be encouched in this for a good long time. With this concern that you draw, as I do as well, what steps will you take? What steps will you take, and that you're taking? What steps will you take knowing that this aspect of the frontier, which is vastly undiscovered and the whole world is unprepared for?
Yeah. I believe that if we start where we are today and implement these guardrails that we keep talking about, these principled guardrails where we're prioritizing people first, where we're prioritizing mitigating bias and mitigating discrimination to protect the people, ensuring that data is protected. When we do those things in a strategic, uniformed manner, whether it's just in a corporation or within a particular country or state, we can then continue to build upon that as technology evolves. But if we don't take those steps today, literally today, then we're going to find ourselves so far behind that it's going to be even harder to catch up. But at least if we can put these guardrails in place now and continue to build on that, then we will have practiced, right? People, we are not familiar with these guardrails or how to operate within these guardrails. If we put them in place today and learn how to maneuver, learn how to navigate the world of speed and innovation that we want to navigate within the confines of these guardrails, and become more adept at how to do that, then as technology evolves, we can add more, maybe different guardrails to the playbook so that we can continue to attempt to evolve the guardrails and the governance framework alongside the evolution of technology. But that's the best we can do.
We need more leaders like you. We need more people to understand the preciousness of this moment that can answer the call. And I understand in order to have leaders like you that your role may be of that of an educator.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that. Definitely.
I give a real sigh of relief because I understand that this work is only administered by a few. This is heart work.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes, it is.
This is heart work. Everyone at GatherVerse, please take some time to follow Alaska and be supportive of the work that she's doing and find out from her how she could be supportive of you and understanding and helping to better appreciate the importance and the need
Yeah.
for guardrails to protect you and your loved ones. So with that said, we appreciate the time that you've given us. I know that we've gone over some, but these things often happen here in the verse, and we look forward to being able to have you again. You epitomize what we talk about, the superhero engine.
Thank you.
We thank you for your leadership, Alaska, and our gather was well.
Thank you so much.
Upcoming next, everyone, we have Lynn Jatal and a few invited guests as we assembled this roundtable. We know that we're broadcasting, and a lot of our speakers are coming from the continent. And as it was expressed earlier, there are sometimes Wi-Fi issues and blackouts and things that people suffer, but we're doing our best to be able to assemble voices and hearts around the world so that we can continue to have these discussions as we just have now, because you're not going to get this from CNN. You're not going to get this from Fox News. You're not going to get this from VentureBeat, but you will get it here at GatherVerse. Follow Alaska. There was much that was said. May our gather be well.
Hello and greetings. All right. Okay, here we go. All right.
Yeah, greetings, Lena.
All right. Here we go. All right. So thank you so much, Christopher and Luasia, for that insightful fireside chat. And here for our final roundtable, GatherVerse Africa Tech for Humanity Summit, day 1, and we will be talking about the future is present, grounded young leaders at the helm of governance and digital leaps. There's something very important that was just mentioned previously, and just touched across what we're talking about when it comes to governance and the infrastructure. And we really apologize for the speakers who were to be on this roundtable panel. They had some technical difficulties, and we're going to have just this fireside chat as the way we are. So here we go. And with me is Azella, and I would like you to introduce yourself, tell us who you are and why you're here.
Thank you very much. My name is Ekene Kamchuku Ezela, but you can call me Kene for short. I'm a Nigerian. Also, I'm the founder of Teen Girls in Blockchain, an advocate of girl child, education, both technically and non-technical. Also, I am a blockchain enthusiast and also a blockchain educator in the space. I've been in this space for quite a long time, since 2016, in the blockchain space actually, and the Web3 space. So after my degree, I hopped into the blockchain. I saw there is need for it. That is the future. I made some researches and then started studying it. Had a couple of courses I took around it, and then today I'm also heading this my organization called Teen Girls in Blockchain. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for the impeccable work you're doing there with the teen girls, right? It's very commendable. The research, I can understand the amount of efforts that you put in to just understand what is blockchain in the aspect of where you are. and being effective enough to even teach other people. So we welcome you and we create you. This discussion today is something that comes across my heart, and I just want to ask you, what does it really look like for, or what does it mean for leaders to be in the governance in today's digital world? What does governance look like to you as a young person? Your mic, please. Can you unmute?
All right, we're back then.
Yeah, Russell.
Go ahead, ask me.
I will put internet everywhere in the world. But anyway, thanks for coming in. But Russell.
Yeah.
With young people, what is governance to you? What does it mean to you in UK? What are they saying in the UK? What is governance to them? As we bring in Kene.
I mean, governance means a lot of things. Again, how I was saying previously in our previous chat when was with Christopher, is that it's multitude, as in like it comes down to policies, it also comes down to standards, it also comes down to morals, principles. I think there's a lot of ways in which you can look when it comes to governance. Governance is really just kind of like a way in which you can control it, so to speak, right? Or be able to have like the government. The government is a governance in itself too. So I think governance for the youth today is very interesting because I don't think some of the youth understand, right? I think when you're younger, you don't understand really kind of politics or the governance side of things until you start growing older, and then you start kind of getting a bit more money, and then you start going, and then you get to a certain stage where you're like, actually, yeah, I need to know about governance. I need to get into politics. I need to get involved into all the areas when it comes to the governance side. So I can't really sort of, when it comes to the youth, I can't really explain it for them because I'm a millennial myself. I'm 33, so technically I'm old for a lot of youngsters, right? But what I can say is when they get to a certain age, you start to realize, right, what governance does mean and how important it is, and how it runs society, how it runs companies, and how it makes you having like a centralized governance system keeps the peace and keeps things flowing in the world and in AI and in all different technical areas. So I guess that's the long-winded way to sort of answer your question. I guess I did answer it, but
yes, you did. You did me justice, and I'm gonna come to you on AI governance as well. Kene, what is governance to you? What are the youth in Nigeria and your teen girls saying? What is governance to them?
Yeah, thank you for that. Actually, Rachel said a lot. Governance to me is kind of control. Is more like guidance. Like people get to understand how things are being guided, procedures, processes.
All right, as he comes back, Russell, you mentioned something to do with governance in AI. Can I just boil down to that root? What is governance in AI? Let's be specific. What does that look like for you?
Governance in AI is extremely important. I know that with a roundtable or fireside chat, they were speaking about guardrails and everything like that. I mean, I think governance in AI is even more bigger than that. It's safety is important, yes. Protection for harm, completely agree. Policies are important, yes. Standards are important, yes. But governance is really being able to control the AI when it comes to the operation side, right? And for example, if an AI does go loose, so to speak, or go crazy or AWOL or anything like that, right? You want a sort of a failover in place, right, to be able to either remove that, right, or stop it, or have a way in being able to mitigate that, right? So governance when it comes to that standpoint, and as in actual AI model itself, and actually being used for whatever your use is, both personal and business, you want to stop a way in which operationally, at any point, you can stop that and stop that from being or causing any sort of more harm, right? So that's the way I see the AI governance side is more about the operations of the AI itself, how it behaves, how it performs, what it says, what it does, hallucinations, toxicity, privacy, all these different areas. The governance needs to be put in place for all of that to be able to stop the model at any point that it needs to. Now I will say this as well. When it comes to super intelligence in 3 to 5 years' time, and people think, oh, we can press a button to turn it off. No, that's not the case. Because eventually AI will have the power to run itself. There's no button to turn it off. It's more highly intelligent than any human in the world. And it more or less, I wouldn't say controls the world, but it's at least more intelligent than mankind put together. So that's completely scary, I know. Is that a reality that we could be going to the next 5-10 years? Yes. But at the same time, right now, do we need things to have governance in place when it comes to AI to mitigate the current issues that we do have? Absolutely.
So what I'm getting from you, Russell, is what you're saying is we have the aspect of AI governance, right? And super intelligence is coming up. So are we looking at now AI has to choose its own governance, or what are we looking at? Is AI has going to have its own separate governance? If we're not going to take actions right now, is AI going to have its own separate governance, and what does that look like?
It's interesting that you bring that conversation up because the question then goes to, is AI going to keep AI in check, or be watching it?
Yes.
The short answer to your question is yes. But also the other question is, could it potentially manipulate itself? Could it change its code? Or as Christopher likes to say, once the vibe coder does the vibe coding now, what happens when the AI doesn't need the vibe coder anymore because it can vibe code itself, right? So are there going to be instances when that happens? Yes. But I think we do need to have maybe certain defined models that can watch other models, so to speak, and at least monitor them, at least at the minimum, and also think about how the lady previously saying was when it comes to the risks and the safety and the trust, of course. Then I think at that point, let's say 5 years time, AI might be keeping AI in check, so to speak, and AI might have its own AI governance. Here's the thing: we're going to a future which no one has been to before, so we don't know what's going to happen, if this is going to be even real or not. Or the thing is, you could put as much human AI governance as you want in. Could it potentially get past that? Yeah, it could. So that's what I'm saying.
This is a new path, a completely new path. No one has been there before, and we've never been this way before. Can we just say we've never been this way before? And we're about to see something that we have never seen before, and we don't have a blueprint. So just even to follow up on that, what is the governance that we have right now? Do we have governance right now? Can we successfully say we have governance, or we still don't have governance?
I mean, in a nutshell, yes, we do. I mean, obviously, we have, the most known one is the UA Act. You do have, sort of like regional level. Like, for example, in the UK, we have a GDRP, which we also have an AI level when it comes to that. Any sort of autonomous decisions that get made has to be, audited, so to speak, right? So, are there governance? Is there a governance in place at this moment in time? Yes. But is there enough governance? That's a different question.
That's a different question. Yeah.
Or also, here's what I like to think too when it comes to the benchmarks and standards. Are there enough benchmarks and standards out there? As in, are there enough benchmarks and standards that are correct when it comes to using these models, right? Now, I don't mean maths, I don't mean PhD in this or whatever else you want to go on about. Actual practical use cases in which I'm using right now as we speak. What is the actual benchmark and standard for that? That's a whole different thing.
Tell us more about that. That's a follow-up for me to you. Tell us more about that. What do you think? What's your take, and what's the future of that?
I think you're trying to get me to spill the beans here. Like,
yes.
You're like, Russell, just keep talking.
Yeah.
I think you're just taking out. You've got an AI recording me right now, just taking down notes, going, "I'm going to use this later." So when it comes to standards and benchmarks, it depends what standards and benchmarks you are wanting, right? If it's from an ethical standpoint, or is this just from a practical standpoint? Now, there's already a lot of standards and benchmarks out there when it comes to ethics, and are there ones that are maybe missing? Yes, but when it comes to practical standards and benchmarks, like for example, how fast is this in responding, or is this actually speaking to me in a healthy way, right? Like, these are all different sort of standards and benchmarks which are manipulated to what either A, you want when it comes to your own values and standards that you have maybe, or B, when it comes to a business standpoint. So the standards and benchmarks need to be set both personally and for the business side. And I think really we need to have universal benchmarks and standards which could be applicable when it comes to, for example, human values. I'm not just talking ethical here. I'm talking about other benchmarks and standards. And I'm not also just talking from bias. I'm not also just talking from a safety standpoint, but I'm also talking about from a general standpoint of, does this do what it's supposed to do at this standard level? If the answer is yes, great. If the answer is no, okay, well then what can we do to improve that to make sure that they can hit that standard? So hopefully that answers your question. But the point is I can't really give you exact standards and benchmarks like, hey, here's what you should be doing, because it depends on the context. And when you're talking about ethical, there's already a bunch of them out there, but it also comes from your own values and your own company and your own standards, your own benchmarks on what you want to do. So
yeah, that is very thought-provoking. I would have loved to take it a little bit deeper, but you're accusing me of wanting you to spill all the beans, so I'm gonna shift gears. I don't want more accusations from you. And Kenny, you're back. I hope you can hear us. And just shifting to the next panel, not panel. Question is, what are the kind of leadership are we seeing emerging today that the old systems find it challenging, or that that challenge the old systems? What are the new systems that the youth are coming up with when it comes to leadership that the old system is finding challenging, and how do we really marry the two systems, the young and the emerging and the older system of leadership? Perhaps Kenny, you can go with that. I hope we can get to hear from you. We'd really love to.
Okay, thank you for that. When you say the old, the new, is that there's a whole lot. There is a big gap, between the youth and the older ones in terms of leadership. I will say from Nigeria perspective, what we are seeing. A lot of things, since 1960 we got independence. I'll use the government as an example. The way things are being run is just like it's still old-fashioned, and we have a set of, we have the Gen Z. I think we have the new. I don't know what's called now. We have the millennium. We have others as well. So when you combine someone who is in the Gen Z and then someone who is in the millennium, which is around 30 plus, and these are the youth, the vibrant guys who are seeing what the AI is doing, who are seeing what the big data are doing, who are seeing what the blockchain is doing, who are seeing what the metaverse, the Web3 is doing, and you are still telling them to be doing things analogically, where you can write exams in papers, where votes are conducted in papers and stuff like that. So there's a big gap in Africa. I don't know about Europe, but there's a big gap in Africa for the leaders of the old and the new leaders who are emerging. Now there is these debates always when we have younger people who are running to be like CEOs, even CEOs of banks, you know, in Africa. You see younger CEOs, when they get into office, they try to implement things, and sometimes it disrupts the movements of the banking systems or the government, you know, both the oil sectors and every other sector. Oh, sorry. Yeah, both the other sectors as well. So it's quite difficult to really understand. But the thing there is that thanks to the AI, thanks to also the emerging technologies that are coming up, because the older folks are also doing their best to align, thereby giving the younger.
All right, that was a very heartfelt expression that I would love to follow up to. And Russell, do you feel like there's a gap between the old and the new system?
Say that again, sorry.
What are the old? Do you feel like there's a huge gap between the old system of governance or leadership with the new system that is coming up with the young people, with the millennials, Gen Zs? Do you feel that gap, even where you are from the European perspective?
I mean, yes and no. I guess yes, because the thing is, like, youth in general always like to come up with new ideas, right? Or they always have new ways in which things are done. I mean, you know, I was young once, right? And I had some crazy new ideas and what I wanted to do and what I thought was right. So I always, with the youth, I always see them wanting to come up with new innovative ways and how to do the governance. Is it always correct, or is it always, or can it be crazy? Yes. Like any idea, everyone has crazy ideas, I think, in our lifetime. But I do think the youth are, especially when it comes to, I think it's Gen Z and Gen Y. I'm pretty sure it is, or Gen A. I can't remember. I think it's Gen Y. When it comes to the younger generation, especially now, and these, you know, you got to think the generations that are growing up now have not even lived without technology, right? They've grew up with this. This is the first thing that they got, right? Even my nieces, the first thing they got was tablets, right?
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about that and you're thinking about, oh, everyone's growing up with technology and they don't know a time before technology, right? When it comes to a governance standpoint, it brings new ways in how the governance is done because of that, right? And because of how people are growing up. Not sure what it's like in Africa because I can't say that I've been there. It might be completely different in Africa. It might be because, you know, everyone's not running around a tablet, so to speak, right? But, you know, maybe you guys enjoy a time where you get to sit around together and be able to watch something on a tablet or watch something on the TV, where everyone else is in Europe is just going da, 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 on the phones and all this sort of stuff and not even talking to each other. So I still think that's important. I do think community is extremely important. I still think family time is important. And it is a shame to see that sort of fading. So, but then that can affect governance too. So, yeah. So to answer your question in a nutshell, yes, I can see new ways and differences coming in, and I just don't know at what point though is it going to change, so to speak, or how it's going to change, if that makes sense.
You know how I see it when it comes to the point where you said it's gonna change. I look at it this way. You say how right now we're the young people for the Gen X or the boomers, we're the young people for them, and these guys were young people for some other generations, and that generations were young for other generations. So I'm seeing a cycle of not every young generation comes with its own ideas that really challenge the previous system. And it's not something that is going to change. I'm not seeing that change at all. What I'm certain Gen Alpha will bring something totally different from millennials, and there's going to be such a debate like this one. That is guaranteed. So for me, how I look at it is, how do you even marry the two? Because there's always going to be that conflict. There's always been that conflict. How you govern your company versus how I can govern as a young person is totally different. So for me, my idea is if we can find a way to always intermarry generational gaps, that would be a very permanent solution for every generation or the young generation that will be coming up. Just having that strategy, even in governance itself, how do we pass power? How do we pass the baton to the next generation? And how do we embrace the ideas? Because, hey, people are getting born every day.
That's true.
Yeah. One day you're gonna be a grandparent, and your grandchild will be like, well, how is Russell? How is this man even governing me like this? How is he telling me to do this and that? This is not how we do it. So for me, it's always an intergenerational conversation. And I just want to shift gears to, you mentioned about family, you mentioned about this kind of societal values. So how do you keep leadership values intact when facing pressure to conform? Perhaps even the family values. How do you just keep that intact even with the pressure to conform?
Accountability, alignment, and being able to control yourself. I think it comes down to a lot personally to the individual in how they keep the values and how they, one thing I have learned is you can't control what people do, but you can control how you react to them. Right?
That is right.
And if you think about that and say, right, well, if I can control myself and I can control my own values and how I react to things, then that allows me to keep my values and keep myself intact and keep my morals and keep my principles and whatever else that you have personally as an individual. So I think that is important, and every person needs to have that. And I think also, if you do mess up, you should take accountability for what you do. But also, I think it also comes down to communication and transparency too.
Yes.
As in, if you're clear about your communication, you're clear or transparent about what your values are and what you want to do, and this is how I'm going to be and how this is how I'm going to act, especially if you talk to your family about it, for example, then I think being able to have that and being able to be transparent and also think about how you want to move forward, so to speak, right, into the future, then I think being able to have those capabilities to do that is extremely important.
Yes, with the capability to be accountable, to even be transparent. Personally, where I come from, sometimes transparency doesn't apply, right? You come and tell your parents, maybe, or your elders. We have elders. You tell them how transparent you are. This is what I want to do from now henceforth, and it comes against them. No matter how transparent you are, you definitely know what you want to say, what you want to do is overruled. You can't do it here. It's not part of us, right? But I just have a follow-up to that. What is values? How do you define values in your head? What is values? Is it something that we can define as a society, or is it just individualistic? This is my value as a person.
I mean, values is very multifaceted. I think it can be both used personally and also from a universal standpoint. Values to me is basically a multitude when it comes to the standards that you have, but also standards for yourself, but also potentially standards for others, right? If you want to look at it that way. But values is like valuing yourself, as in how do I make myself the best version that I can be, right? That's a value, so to speak. So defining it really is basically saying, what do I want to be? What are those standards that I want to abide by? What are those morals I want to abide by? And that is my value, as in what I'm going to be and give to the world, so to speak. I by the way, I do see some comments.
Yeah, please share them.
Well, so I noticed, like, was it Media Tiger says it's interesting because for the first time in the history of the world, we have tools that are different. Power is moving away from the people who controlled it and shifting towards actually freeing people, as they are not capable of things like that. If you think you can control a T-1000, of course, believe you are the same way as you are going to answer 10 questions faster than GPT, which means no believe technology. I do agree with you, Tiger, by the way. But kind of going back to your question, yeah, value is important. And I think also, like, when it comes to technology, there needs to be values in which they have too, right? And I think we have to set those standards for them to be able to have those values, because if we don't, then AI might not know which way to go or how to do that or what to do. Especially when it comes to a continent like Africa, how do we culturally align it when it comes to the culture values within that society to make sure that AI is with Africa, basically?
Interesting perspective. Before I come into the AI perspective, we've said a value can be personal, right? This is how I want to be. This is my morals. This is how this is the way I do things, right? This is what I stand for, right? But, when it comes to power, I just want to marry this with power, right? As someone said on the comment, we live in unprecedented times. You can't really center or just say power is something that we put through the government. You've also been in blockchain. You've also been in these emerging technologies that are emerging, decentralized, right?
Yes.
So with this level of decentralization of power, like there's so much power given to people right now. Power of information, power of doing this, decentralizations in finance, and all of that. Do you think power and values go hand in hand? And how do we marry the two? And how do you define power then?
I don't. Here's the thing. It comes down to humans, right? It doesn't matter whether it's decentralized or not. There's always a central point in which it goes to. And when it comes to humans have different values themselves. So what I mean by that is you could have one person that is power hungry and has a massive ego, right? And wants all the power from themselves. But then you've also got the other opposite end, which is, someone who wants to give to everybody and give to humanity and everything. So I think it's both sides of it. And I think, can values and power align, so to speak? Yes.
Yeah.
But I don't think necessarily they are intertwined, right? It depends on the individual and the human. I know we're running out of time, but that's what I would finish on and saying on that part. So
interesting. I see power and values aligning, but I'm not sure in this decentralized world with all kinds of personalities.
Yeah,
and
true.
the evil guys, good guys versus bad guys. I mean, there's always gonna be a difference. Russell, let's just talk about one thing that I've been seeing in a lot of reports that is in McKinsey, Deloitte. There has been statistics that are saying that nowadays young people don't define leadership with titles. They don't define success with also titles. So how do you define success for yourself? What is your all the young people or all the people who are watching? How do we define success then?
I will say a famous quote, which is you can define. There's two ways you can define a sex. Number one could be money, status, power, etc. Or number two, it could be based upon happiness, how you are, fulfillment, etc. Depends which way you want to look at it. One way you could look at one side, one way you could look at the other side. So I think you have to align with what you think is best between those two. And if happiness and fulfillment and having a family and everything like that is your joy, and that's your status, if you want to call it that, or what fulfills you most, then I would say that. Or you could be the other side. But that's what I would say.
It's a choice. It's a choice.
Yeah.
Russell, time is running out. We could have gone on, and it's always a pleasure to hear from you. You always have some wealth of insights to learn from. And you know what? It was a good gather for us, right? We could conclude that it was a gather for us. What a gather! We thank everyone who tuned in, and we also thank the people who made all the efforts, but the internet or the infrastructure was not on their side, right? But we truly appreciate you. We see you, and perhaps you can just write something on the comment, and we will really appreciate it. Now, over to you, GatherVerse team. Thank you so much, Russell, Bandy, and our Gather as well.
Thank you for having me.
When so many people believe that we've seen the best of AI, I submit to you that its most capable is yet to come. Where so many may feel that they've figured it out, or perhaps apathy lays when it comes to being diligent and accelerating past these models and not letting them accelerate past us. I believe that that's still capable. There is a place in this world, in a land filled with people, women and men, border to border, ceiling to floor. There is a culture that exists that has what I would submit is the greatest untapped potential of humankind. There is a place where people are surviving genocide, disease, and famine, unlike what we've seen contemporary to our time. There is a place where the youth are leading the technological revolution, where they want to better themselves. They see other continents doing it. They see other opportunities that have been laid to them, and they want what they have. There is a place that's in need of more roads that has roads. There is a place that is more in need of buildings and spaces that has space. There is a place that is so rich with minerals and precious assets and rare earths that the whole world, in many respects, has seized upon it. There is a place that's been infiltrated by extractive cultures and extractive structures that have taken from the farm field and has not even taken time to plant a seed. There is a place where people are as industrious and capable of technological innovation as anyone that walks this earth. And there is a place that I believe that if we do not rally to, support, learn from, and guide, that we will all as technologists and all as non-technologists miss out on the great opportunity of scale of innovation that will lack such a great cultural contribution to the cultural layer that we may never be afforded the opportunity again. Why? Because the machine species is upon us. It does not slow down. It does not wait. It will innovate. It will guide. It will teach. It will build. And it will surpass humanity in ways we haven't even considered. But there's certain things that the machines will never disrupt, can never infiltrate. It can never duplicate the human heart, the human code, culture. And there is a place that I know of inherently called Africa that is filled with all of this. In innovation, we will never be successful until everyone has the accessibility and the afforded opportunity to innovate, to contribute, and to manifest their culture in such a fashion that we can appreciate and understand more from their lens, ecologically, ecocentrically, intimately, of a thing that we never knew. And maybe then, we'll have the appreciation of vicarious experience through the eyes of another. No matter the color, no matter the gender. Africa is strong. I'm inspired by today's activities, even with the hiccups that we experienced along the way. This is GatherVerse, and even in the imperfection, it's perfect for what it's supposed to be, what it will become, and what it has been. We thank you for each of you that have taken the time to rally with us, to journey with us, to travel with us, to experience with us, and to share what it is that you've heard today with us and others, your neighbors, your roommates, your partners, your spouse, your children, your parents, your family, your friends, a stranger. Because if we do not share this story, then no one else will. And at a time where we're developing relationships with machines more so than others, I think that it's more of an appropriate time for us to sustain the human preservation of conversation now more than ever. Because if we lose that ability to communicate with one another, then there's some things that cannot be made right again, some things which cannot be made whole again. There's some things we can afford to lose, and there's some things we should, but there's some things we should not. Manifestation of communication one to another and the expression therein is more precious than I suspect that most of us will understand. Today, our Gather was well. And on the next time at GatherVerse Tech for Humanity Summit 2025 Africa, we greet and welcome you where you're at in day 2. May our gather be well.
He's on a drug. Oh, mothers, tell your children not to do what I have done. Spend your lives in sin and misery in the house of the rising sun. Well, I got one foot on the platform, the other foot on the train. Going back to New Orleans to wear that ball and chain. Well, there is a house in New Orleans they call the Rising Sun, and it's been the ruin of many a poor boy. And God, I know